Chapter 467. It didn't take long for Yan Zhika, who was in class, to reply to Lu Cheng's declaration. "Go for it, hubby." Lu Cheng couldn't help but laugh. First, he replied with an emoji of, "I'm determined to do better with a red scarf on my head." Then he put down his phone and set up a stance in the room. He visualized the statue of Emperor Yan, which was heavy as its core and was clothed in flames. With this, he controlled the flame force in his body and guided it to slowly condense and compress. This practice lasted for 4 to 5 hours with occasional breaks. When more than 80% of the lights outside the window had been extinguished, darkness once again ruled the world, and Lu Cheng suddenly opened his eyes. A cluster of blazing white flames flashed in the depths of his eyes, like the sun hanging on the horizon in the early morning. Upgrading one's force was neither easy nor difficult. After grasping the essence of the Emperor Yin diagram, and using the experience of Ice Spirit Force as a reference, he successfully completed the transformation from Zhu Rong Force to Emperor Yin Force. The fire force in his body turned from red to white. It was thick and heavy and it barely formed a cycle. He didn't need to practice it again every time he finished using it. Lu Cheng rotated his neck and shook his head, making his bones crackle like beans popping in a fire. He adjusted his breath, took the access card and left the room, heading for the hotel pool on the 31st floor. It was midnight and the pool was already closed. There was no one around, but this wasn't a problem for Lu Cheng. He found a window and jumped out. He jumped over the various obstacles on the outer wall as if he was walking on flat ground and entered from the other side. In the darkness, the pool was quiet, so deep that he couldn't see the bottom. Felt like a horror movie. Lu Cheng kicked off his shoes and socks, took off his t-shirt and shorts, and jumped into the pool bare-chested. There were no flowers or waves, only circles of ripples spreading out slowly. Not long after he reached the bottom. He sat down with his legs crossed and closed his eyes. His breathing had stopped. His body was isolated from the air and surrounded by gentle waves. It was as if he had returned to his mother's womb before he was born. His heart was calm. Naturally, there were slight changes in his internal circulation. His spirit could see his internal organs, fascia, blood vessels, and muscles without visualization. The Ice Spirit Holy Light portrait and the Emperor Yen portrait intertwined. He took this opportunity to circulate the two forces and experience their dependence and attraction on the root pulp. In this environment, this feeling was subtle and peculiar. Every once in a while, Lu Cheng had to surface to breathe out the old and take in the new. Then he would sink to the bottom again to feel his grasp and try to influence it. Failure after failure. Although he had pushed open the door to the inhuman stage, there was still a small obstacle before he could start to transform. It was not something that could be done overnight. It was a little past 5 and the sky was still dark. Lu Cheng swam to the edge of the pool and supported himself with both hands. He exhaled some turbid breath and a little impatience. When his emotions calmed down, the ice mirror condensed again. He continued to flip over and sink, persevering. This time, after failing to gain anything from his visualization of the Emperor Yen portrait and the Ice Spirit Holy Light portrait, he changed his train of thought and attempted force concentration. His chi and blood contracted and his mind sank inward. Ice and fire formed a balance, intertwining with each other in a rotating manner. It was as though he had formed a human body Big Dan that reflected the nebula in his lower abdomen. Inside the Big Dan there was a sudden change. The Ice Spirit Holy Light portrait spread out and turned into a boundless background of stars. It was dark, cold, and empty. There was no heat and no sound. The Emperor Yen portrait collapsed and reformed again. It threw out streams of flames and matter, turning into great suns and stars. The two were in perfect balance, like a true projection of the universe. It was different from what it was before. Lu Cheng's body trembled. He felt as though the human body Big Dan he was holding had a subtle reflection of the starry sky above him and his surroundings. With a hum, the Jin Dan in his lower abdomen was affected and vibrated. The water rippled and the starlight flickered. Compared to the human body Big Dan, there was a sense of disharmony and imperfection. The Big Dan exploded and force gushed out. At this moment, Lu Cheng suddenly felt the subtle movement of his root pulp and vaguely grasped it. Unknowingly, he found himself floating to the surface of the water. He opened his eyes and thought about what had happened. He felt that his balance of ice and fire and human body Big Dan were more complete than Longhu Immortal's Jin Dan. They were also closer to nature. This would be very important for him to reach the Alcade state in the future. Sure enough, the times are changing. So is training, Lu Cheng thought happily. What a lucky thing to be standing on the shoulders of so many great masters. You can learn from the predecessors but not from them. After inspecting himself, he sank to the bottom again. Following his previous train of thought, he used force concentration to balance ice and fire and affected his root pulp. Dawn broke and the morning light shone on the swimming pool. It illuminated most of the frozen ice and frost on the surface of the water and the various hot springs that were bubbling with steam. What? With the sound of water, Luqing stood up and stood on the surface of the water. Only his ankles were still submerged in the water. His hair was wet and his exposed muscles were well defined but not deformed. Droplets of water slid down the surface of his skin, giving him the masculine beauty of a man. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Luqing walked on the water without sinking. He slowly walked to the edge of the swimming pool and picked up his t-shirt, shorts, shoes, socks and other things. He casually put them on and left this level. Because of his supernatural ability, he had created a much more exaggerated spectacle than Peng Liyun's. Back in his room, Luqing picked up his phone. An uncontrollable smile appeared on his face. He typed a bunch of words and sent it to Yanjika. You'll be able to see my 5th pin certificate in September. Yes, he had just succeeded in guiding the mutation of his root pulp. In other words, he had officially started to transform. In another 10 days he would be completely reborn and become an inhuman. And from now on, until the transformation is complete, I will truly become stronger day by day. It will be visible to the naked eye. Yanjika, who hadn't finished her last class, quickly replied with an emoji covering its mouth to hide its laughter. Cheng, if we were to use another way to describe inhuman, you are now a genuine inhuman. Cheng, you are not a human. After sending this sentence, she added a laughing out loud emoji. Feeling the joy and excitement hidden in the girl's words, Luqing's mood improved. He shook his head slightly and laughed out loud. Suddenly he had the urge to look at her and video chat with her. He had been practicing with her every morning for the past few days and had missed the best time to video chat. But considering that Yanjika was still in class, he resisted the urge and only replied with a text message. In class, Yanjika was happy, proud and a little melancholy. Cheng is getting better and better. What about me? She raised her head and looked at the teacher. Her motivation to learn suddenly increased. I also want to be a better version of myself. On the 31st floor of the hotel, the swimming pool was open. Men and women who were used to exercising in the morning arrived. They all did their warm-up and jumped into the seemingly normal water. It's so cold. A girl cried out. Oh, it's hot. A guy jumped up and jumped into the hot spring without any preparation. At the same time, Luqing called Geezer Shi and reported the good news. Master, I have mastered Emperor Yen Force. He did not mention that he had started to transform. He planned to tell his master when it was almost time. Well, not bad. Geezer Shi was not surprised. He had expected it. He clicked his tongue and said, Little brat, you can try to transform now. Besides breaking through in the water, there are actually a few other ways. I think it might be more suitable for you, for example. Luqing was stunned. After a moment of confusion, he said, Master, why didn't you say so earlier? I have started to transform. I spent a lot of effort in the water to start the transformation. Geezer Shi was very experienced. He guessed his disciple's state. He laughed and said, I have never seen such a silly disciple like you. Who doesn't ask their master for advice before breaking through? Even if they talked about this before, it would not be so detailed. Ah, cough. He laughed so hard that he started coughing. He felt that this was the only thing that could make him happy this year. Luqing's face turned red. He cursed his master in his heart and replied embarrassedly, I just wanted to try it myself and ask you if I have any problems. You don't have to say so much. Cough, master, haha, little brat, practice hard. Geezer Shi hung up the phone, hummed a tune and found his precious wine. A day and a half later, Luqing caught up on sleep and continued to transform. He also found a suitable time to video chat with Yanjika. On the 20th of August, the Xinxiang Stadium was packed with people. The heat wave gathered again and the fierce battle started again. Luqing, Peng Liyun and the rest sat in their seats. They first watched a song and dance performance. Then they saw the guest on stage to draw lots for the top 16 battle. There would be 4 battles tonight and tomorrow night. The guest reached into the box and took out a round ball. He looked at the words on it and announced while showing it, China Luqing. Damn, the first one was picked. Luqing was amused. He straightened his back and waited for his opponent to confirm. The guest reached out again, fumbled around and took out the second round ball. He showed it, Japan Muko Yamashita. Number 5 seed Muko Yamashita. P.S. Today is the Dragon Boat Festival. I have something to do in the afternoon and tonight at midnight. Please continue to ask for monthly votes and recommendation tickets. Chapter 468. Japan. Muko Yamashita. Hearing the guest's announcement, Muko Yamashita's expression changed. He revealed a smile and muttered to himself, "Great." In the third round of the double elimination competition, his confidence had been shaken because of Lu Cheng's easy victory over Bako. This was unforgivable. This was the intolerable weakness in the tradition of the ultimate Hadu sect. He had to make up for it immediately and defeat it immediately. Now that he had drawn Lu Cheng, it was exactly what he wanted. He would use this victory to wash away his stain. Furthermore, this could help in the completion of the secret mission. Beside Muko Yamashita, the researcher with messy hair pushed his glasses up and beamed with joy. Ichii Sakata and the rest of the team were also filled with anticipation. There was even a fanatical shout, "Muko-kun, it's time to prove the name of the ultimate Hadu sect." Since the start of the competition, Muko Yamashita's luck had been good. He had not encountered any strong opponents and had not been able to display the strength of the ultimate Hadu sect. On the other hand, Ichii Sakata and the rest had been eliminated one after another, causing the sect to lose face. Faced with the request, Muko Yamashita straightened his back and nodded with confidence, "Okay, hi. Muko Yamashita?" Lu Cheng was stunned for a second before he mocked himself. What luck! He had encountered an inhuman in the round of 16. He was not surprised or disappointed by the draw. The round of 16 still followed the rule of not meeting each other in the same country. Apart from the 4 of them, there were still 12 options. There were 5 inhumans and the probability of drawing them was close to 50%. On the way to the Xinxiang Stadium, he had already mentally prepared himself to face strong opponents. Without waiting for Peng Liyun and Chaoyang and Renli to speak, Lu Cheng lowered his head and looked at his phone. He sent an emoji with tears of laughter to Yenjika. "I've drawn another tiger. Schrodinger's tiger versus wild tiger Yamashita. I'm betting on quantum theory school to win." Yenjika replied quickly. From time to time she would take out her phone to check if there was a result of the draw. She sent an emoji touching its head and said, "If you had drawn Fierce Tiger from Nakayama a few days ago, I would have been very unsure. But you have started to transform for 2 days. I have high hopes for you." Patting shoulder, "Then I can only live up to Coach Yan's expectations." Lu Cheng sent an emoji. To be honest, he was quite confident, so much so that he was eager to give it a try. Muko Yamashita had only mastered Hadu in May. After changing his rank, his standard was at least half a level lower than Vagar's. If I could fight Vagar to such an extent before my transformation, what more now? In the past 2 days my strength could be described as, even when I drink water my strength is increasing. After replying to the message he felt something in his heart. He looked up and found Peng Liyun, Renli and Chaoyang and Zhong Ningtao looking at him. "What's wrong?" Lu Cheng asked in confusion. "I was wondering if I should encourage you or comfort you, but looking at you, it seems that there is no need to say anything." Peng Liyun laughed and said meaningfully. This guy was happily playing with his phone, and his smile never faded. He didn't need us to say anything. And Chaoyang opened his eyes and nodded at the same time as Renli. Lu Cheng laughed dryly and pointed to the ring. "It's the second group." In this group, Vagar was up against a non-seeded, non-wild card player. Taking the opportunity, Lu Cheng glanced at the screen again and replied. At this moment he saw a message from Talker. "I heard that you are going to fight against an inhuman? How did you know?" Shocked expression, Lu Cheng replied. "I don't think I have ever mentioned to Little Ming about participating in the King of Youth Pro League. We have been talking about other things for the past few days. On a whim, I surfed your forum and found out that you have been handed over to the country. Now you are fighting in the King of Youth Pro League. You have even drawn the inhuman mighty one from Japan, Muko Yamashita. He has a grudge against his parents, right?" Kai Zongming said with a proud smile, "That's why I'm here to tell you something to comfort you after encountering a strong enemy." "What is it?" Lu Cheng replied casually without thinking. Kai Zongming said with a sly smile, "Be strong. Get lost." Lu Cheng said concisely and couldn't help but laugh. As time passed, the third group was drawn. Bantam was lucky and also faced a non-seeded, non-wild card opponent. After a while, the guests started to draw the fourth group and called out Peng Liyun's name. The atmosphere of the other representatives suddenly changed and became more tense. Without letting them guess for too long, the guest grabbed the round ball, took a look and displayed, Xinxiang Waku. Third-seeded, Arhat Waku. Not bad. Peng Liyun's lazy expression turned serious and his eyes lit up like lightning. It seemed that he had been looking forward to facing such an opponent for a long time. Lu Qing and the rest didn't say much and only felt sympathy for Waku for 3 seconds. It's your turn to see what a serious Demon King is like. At the Xinjiang representative group, Waku put his hands in front of his chest and looked as sad as usual. The other members around him also looked unhappy. After that, different guests drew the fourth group for the next day. Renly continued her good luck and like Vagar and Banam, she would face a non-seeded, non-wild card opponent. Anchaiyang was neither good nor bad and faced the 6th-seeded, Gu Sai, who was ranked the highest below the inhuman stage. After the ceremony, all the representatives returned to the changing room and took a short break. The first match would officially start at 8:15 p.m. Lu Qing vs. Muko Yamashita. In the livestream thread, when Lu Qing drew the inhuman Mighty One, it was already in an uproar. There were different opinions and discussions. Unparalleled Dragon King said with a funny face, "Don't be nervous. Lu Qing has a high chance of winning this match. Even if it's not 50%, it should be around 30%. Think about it, he almost defeated Vagar, what more the weaker Muko Yamashita. As long as he can reproduce the performance he had when he defeated Bako, it's not impossible for him to win. But the feeling of fighting an opponent who is weaker than you and one who is stronger than you is definitely different. Lu Qing probably won't be able to reproduce that smooth performance." Pig Riding Knight pointed out the problem and got the approval of Road to the Arena, and the rest. Invincible Punch was more inclined towards the judgment of Unparalleled Dragon King. When Lu Qing fought with Vagar, he also performed above his usual standards. It was different that time. He had something new and had the dough formula. He caught Vagar off guard and caused him to misjudge. But now, everyone has more or less grasped his foundation. Facing an inhuman, it will be hard for him to gain the upper hand and create opportunities. A plumber eating mushroom wasn't very optimistic. That's right. But it's still the same old problem. Muko Yamashita is weaker than Vagar. With both sides weakened, Lu Qing still has a chance. Unparalleled Dragon King insisted on his opinion. Eternal Nightfall Yen Shaoling secretly observing, said, "All of you make sense. I choose to die, no, pray make a wish. I support Xiaolong. Oh right, did any of you inform all-knowing man in ganghood, and ask him to prepare to delete his account? At most 3 months. Brahmin, use this to ease the anxiety and nervousness in her heart. I've already tagged him, no need to thank me. I'm a red scarf." Okamoto's fan said with a sly smile. At this moment, all-knowing man in ganghood was browsing through the videos of the first few matches of the King of Ganghood. His expression was getting worse and worse. At most 2 months. He gritted his teeth and muttered, "I have to start directing my popularity to the public account. When the time comes, I won't feel bad about deleting my Weibo account. At most, I'll just create a smaller one. Yes, I have to hurry. I don't want Lu Qing to break through before I'm done directing my popularity." At 8:10 p.m. all the representatives came out from their respective changing rooms and returned to their original positions. Muko Yamashita placed his hands on his knees and waited for a while. When the referee appeared, he stood up abruptly like a towering mountain. "Muko-kun, please?" The researcher with messy hair bowed at the side. Muko Yamashita nodded slightly in response. As the order of the draw was Lu Qing before him, he could only give up on his white karate suit and change into a dark red one. Just as he was about to stride towards the ring, he caught a glimpse of the sweet Kaori Karasawa from the corner of his eye. She took 2 steps forward and stood at the same level as him. Her voice was soft and low, but it did not leak out a single bit as it drilled into his ear. "Are you sure you want to do as they say?" Muko Yamashita was puzzled and turned his head to look. Kaori Karasawa looked straight ahead and said calmly, "This is a martial art of martial arts. As long as you're in the arena, you have to respect your opponent. Furthermore, Lu Qing isn't weak. If you're in a hurry to collect materials, you might lose to him. Muko-kun, give it your all. After defeating him, we'll see what we can do." Muko Yamashita was silent for a moment and didn't reply. He strode forward and approached the stone steps with an imposing manner. After taking 2 or 3 steps forward, he turned his back to Kaori Karasawa and nodded slightly. Glancing at the digital clock, Lu Qing stood up and bumped fists with Peng Liyun and the rest. He could hear the cheers of "good luck." At this moment, his phone rang with a special notification. He picked it up and saw that Yen Jika had sent him a picture of an oven. There were cakes and other things in it. The color was a little burnt and the shape was weird. "Cough, I'm taking the time to practice this." "Looking up at the sky expression," said the girl. So, you want to say, good luck, I'll wait for you to eat? Lu Qing smiled and helped her to fill in the blanks. Yanjika replied, thumbs up expression. Cheng, you know me best. Good luck. Victory for sure. Lu Qing shouted out the slogan, pushed out of QQ and switched to the live post interface. He threw the phone to Chaoyang and laughed out loud. Make me look more handsome in the photo. As he spoke, he walked towards the arena with his head held high. There was no fear, only the will to fight. P.S. The last day of May. Looking for a monthly ticket and a recommendation ticket. It would be a waste if it expired. Chapter 469. You have a good attitude. Hearing Lu Cheng's words, and Chaoyang couldn't help but smile at Peng Liyun and Ren Li. He then picked up his phone and played with it for a few seconds. With a click, he took a picture of his teammate's back. Although it wasn't towering or broad, it was firm and high-spirited enough. He lowered his head to admire it and secretly praised himself, please call me Reliable Anne. While thinking, he uploaded the picture and added the caption, onward journey, fearless of strong enemies. After posting, he immediately refreshed the page. He couldn't believe that there were a few more replies. He couldn't help but feel that this place was very popular and that there was a trend of floor grabbing. Not bad. Praised unparalleled Dragon King concisely. Wonton Seller followed closely. It is little tiger, I didn't know you were so cultured. Come learn how to cook from me. And Chaoyang's eyebrows twitched. His sleepy eyes narrowed into slits. He quickly refreshed the page again. This time, Brahmin sent an emoji biting her finger. This picture is so close. Schrodinger's tiger, don't tell me you're at the spectator stand beside them? And Chaoyang swallowed his saliva and replied with difficulty, yes. At this moment, Lu Qing was already close to the arena. As his opponent was strong and inhuman, he couldn't recreate the leisurely and carefree attitude he had when he was facing Bako. His body was nervous and slightly trembling, secreting hormones to make him more focused and excited. He knew that the subtle state he was in previously was something that could only be encountered but not sought. He didn't feel dejected and kept his thoughts. He visualized ice mirror and let the lake water settle, making his emotions like ice. Under the premise that his body didn't move, it reflected the vigorous fighting spirit and the bloodthirst of the weapons, causing his aura to rise naturally, turning into a terrifying snowstorm that was about to take shape. His body was the towering white snow mountain in this terrifying natural disaster. There seemed to be a whistling sound in the air and the atmosphere became oppressive. Lu Qing walked up the stone steps step by step and entered the arena. He saw Muko Yamashita, who appeared at the same time. This warrior at the inhuman level was taller and wider than him. He had thick eyebrows and a rough appearance. His muscles were shocking. Compared to him, it was like a battle between an adult and a junior high school student. Muko Yamashita had a fanatical look on his face, and his aura was equally shocking. A faint white glow was emitted from his body, freezing the surrounding atmosphere. The spectators along the way were so shocked that they kept quiet out of fear. No one dared to make a sound. Wind seemed to swirl around him as he moved. At this moment, Lu Cheng's and Muko Yamashita's eyes met. The center of the arena seemed to have brightened up a little. In terms of momentum, they were evenly matched. The referee was an experienced inhuman-level expert. After looking left and right, he raised his right hand calmly and got ready. Lu Cheng and Muko Yamashita didn't need to make any further adjustments. Throughout the journey, they had already pushed their condition to the peak. The referee took a step back and suddenly waved his hand. He exhaled and shouted, "Begin." Muko Yamashita shifted his feet and lowered his body. Suddenly he swung his right fist at the same spot. Bam! Extending his arm and pulling his fist, he glided forward with a whistling sound. He was as fast as a high-speed train, and in an instant he was in front of Lu Cheng. During this process, the white glow around him suddenly thickened. Like a torch that was lit with a swoosh, he dragged the shape of a dragon and a tiger in the air, stirring up a terrifying loud sound. Ultimate Hadu Sect killer move, Roaring Dragon and Tiger Fist. Compared to Ichiai Sakata, Muko Yamashita was able to use this move with ease. It was perfectly integrated with his own flash attack. This is the standard of the inhuman level. Good move. Lu Cheng wasn't afraid. Instead, he was overjoyed. His fighting spirit was high and his chi, blood, force and spirit were retracted into a ball. Ice and fire were balanced, forming a rotating miniature starry sky. Snap. The statue of God appeared in his mind. His legs thickened and instantly pushed inward, causing his right arm to expand. He threw a powerful punch in front of him. Bam! A layer of red and white flames ignited on the surface of his fist, condensing and solidifying layer by layer. The half-formed Emperor Yen force. Boom. The sound of their fists colliding was swallowed by the loud explosion. The image of his bulging muscles and bulging veins were covered by the rolling waves of fire and the dissipating white glow. Muko Yamashita's body swayed and quickly stabilized. The surface of his clothes was charred black. Lu Qing took a step back and stepped into the ground. His muscles were aching and numb from the hado. After a full-force attack he was only slightly inferior. On the spectator's stand, Peng Liyun's expression changed slightly. He was half exclaiming and half laughing. He's transformed? Being able to add a force after force concentration was one of the main characteristics of the inhuman level. Lu Cheng's punch just now clearly showed that he was in the transformation stage and had been in it for more than a day. So fast. An Chaoyang couldn't help but exclaim after witnessing the changes in the arena and hearing Peng Liyun's words. How many days has it been since the start of the King of Youth League? He's practically sprinting to the transformation stage with one step each day. Sigh, I'm not as good as you. Renli opened her mouth wanting to say something. She forced herself to hold it in, biting her lip lightly. Inhuman. In the live post, Unparalleled Dragon King shouted out the two words that many people couldn't believe. After the transformation, as long as one didn't accidentally die or suffer from serious injuries, reaching the inhuman level was a sure thing. My eyes must be playing tricks on me. Shocked expression, replied Pig Riding Knight. How long has it been? Road to the arena expression, said laughing angrily. It hasn't even been 4 months since the end of the nationals. Ha 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 ha. Yen Shaoling didn't even type. Instead she sent a voice message. Her voice was no different from a primary school student's. All-knowing man in ganghood, who was watching the live broadcast and writing a long Weibo post to increase the popularity of his public account, was stunned. His face gradually turned pale like dead ashes. Isn't there still 2 more months before the breakthrough? It's only been 2 minutes. It's only been 2 minutes since I found out about it. That's really an animal. In the arena, Lu Qing took a step back to reduce the force, followed closely by the contraction of his chi and force. Using the techniques of 24 blizzard strikes, and the little experience he had gained from yin-yang twist, he launched a counterattack. Bam! His left leg swelled and his instep straightened. He pulled it out from the crack and whipped his opponent's knee with the force of a whip. After realizing that his opponent had achieved another breakthrough, Muko Yamashita, who was already in battle mode, turned his shock and surprise into a fire in his heart. It burned his will and burned even more fiercely. Bending and straightening his knees, he suddenly jumped up and avoided Lu Cheng's kick. At the same time, he extended his right hand and turned his palm into a knife. With a bright glow, he used the momentum of his fall to slash his opponent's neck at lightning speed. Ferocious Tiger Electric Chop. Lu Qing exerted strength in his spine and suddenly bent his back. Not only did he avoid Muko Yamashita's slash, but he also forcefully changed the trajectory of his left leg. He lifted it from the bottom up and kicked towards his opponent's body. At the same time, a bright white glow appeared and gathered into a ball. Along with the martial arts shoes, it spurted out, burning. After the transformation he could also use ice burning on his feet. The martial arts shoes quickly froze and hardened, turning into a stone. Dragging a sparkling flame, it went straight for Muko Yamashita's chest. In the blink of an eye, Muko Yamashita quickly raised his left palm and pressed it against his right hand that had missed. Spreading his palm downward, he struck out a ball of solid and flashing white hadu amidst the dragon's roar. Bam! 2 balls of light scattered silently. Using the recoil, Muko Yamashita leaped back onto the ground. His posture was not messed up. Lu Qing straightened his back and stood up steadily again. Bam! Muko Yamashita slid and swung his fist again. The white glow was thick and the dragon's roar was loud. Lu Qing did not budge an inch. Going tit for tat, he contracted his chi and blood and followed with force. Bam bam bam. Muko Yamashita's every move was a sure kill. He launched a frenzied attack. The white glow was like a torch, dimming and brightening at times. Compared to Ichii Sakata, who had to wait for a while to use similar moves, the difference was like heaven and earth. Bam bam bam. Lu Qing continued to unleash explosive attacks. He was in an intense battle with his opponent. Although he was at a disadvantage due to the difference in strength, he did not show any signs of losing. Bam 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 bam. The sound of punches and kicks reverberated in the surroundings. Occasionally there were loud booms. Layers of white glow and flames spread outwards. The ground cracked, splashed, and snowflakes fell from time to time. It truly illustrated the meaning of inhuman. Mukko Yamashita had a firm grasp of the rhythm. Every time Lu Qing used the force concentration version of 24 blizzard strikes to accumulate momentum, he would immediately switch to whirlwind kick or Hadouken to forcefully interrupt and start all over again. At the same time, he was accumulating his emotions bit by bit, preparing to unleash his killer move. As time passed, Lu Qing, who had unleashed his ice mirror multiple times, felt that this could not go on any longer. He took the initiative to seek a change. Bam! When his controlled Dan left fist, infused with the half-formed ice spirit force, collided with his enemy's fist, which was enveloped in a dense white light, the perfect snowflakes formed by the shockwave drifted down. Mukko Yamashita's arm was a little stiff. Using the rebounding force, he suddenly slid backwards. Sliding on the bumpy ground, his speed was not much different from charging forward. At the bottom of his bare feet, a layer of crystal-clear ice had formed at some point in time. The friction was extremely small. Without hesitation, Mukko Yamashita took a big step forward and gave chase. Before he even got close, he let out a low roar and swung his fist. His body was once again engulfed in a thick white glow. As he retreated, Lu Qing had already visualized the dark, cold, and dreamy ice spirit holy light. Facing the incoming enemy, he stepped on the ground and immediately counterattacked. He shook his right arm and used severe warning. Seeing that the two fists were about to collide, the white glow in Mukko Yamashita's eyes suddenly intensified. The thick Hadouken on the surface of his body suddenly surged forward and condensed into a ball, turning into a glove and covering the outside. I know you have a move to freeze the mind. How could I not be on guard and prepared? Bam! Lu Qing's fist landed. The ball of white glow quickly dimmed and turned into a snowball before shattering into pieces. Bam! Passing through the Hadouken, the moment the two fists met, greenish-black skin and veins appeared. Taking 2 steps back, Lu Qing retreated. Not only did he fail to freeze the enemy, but he also messed up his stance due to the difference in strength. However, he didn't panic. As his body instinctively regained its balance, he raised his hands and formed a seal, outlining a sharp army character. On the other hand, Mukko Yamashita saw the opportunity. His eyebrows furrowed, and the emotions that had been accumulating in his heart suddenly exploded, causing his eyes to turn red. The white light that had once again permeated around him to be dyed red, thick and sticky with blood. Ultimate Hadouken Sect Sure Kill 7 Sins Hadouken. A double attack on the mind and body. Unlike Ichii Sakata, who had to go all out to use it, Mukko Yamashita could use it as long as he had accumulated enough emotions. Army. The deep ancient voice reverberated, stirring up ripples in the blood-red glow. This made Mukko Yamashita slow down by half a beat. However, he was like a stone that fell into the sea. There were no other movements. Bam! Mukko Yamashita stepped forward with his left leg, flexed his shoulders, puffed up his arms and swung his right fist. He turned the thick blood-red glow into a scythe, propelling him forward and slashing towards Lu Qing. It was as fast as a flash of red lightning, leaving no chance for the enemy to dodge. I've seen how you broke Ichii Sakata's 7 Sins Hadouken, with a move of your own creation. However, there's a big difference between me and him. If you dare to try again, you'll regret it. Although Lu Qing's army formula didn't produce the best results, it neutralized the mental attack caused by the blood-red Hadouken, preventing him from being shaken and unable to visualize. He straightened his back and slipped again. He tried his best to dodge but couldn't. The blood-red scythe was right in front of him in an instant. However, he had already grasped the short window of opportunity created by Mukko Yamashita's slow rhythm and his own retreat. In his mind, he visualized the dark and cold background of the starry sky. There was a faint glimmer of the dreamy light of the ice soul. Boom! The dust accumulated and ignited a gigantic and heavy fireball. It crashed into the silence, shattering and collapsing everything even more violently. After perfecting Ice Spirit Force and Emperor Yen Force respectively, Lu Qing's mutated version of Severe Warning had also made corresponding improvements. There were some wonderful changes. I've waited so long for you to use 7 Sins Hadouken, to meet force with force. Lu Qing's eyes widened in anger. He took a step forward, turned around and faced the blood-red scythe head-on with a crushing punch. Poof! A terrifying vortex of attraction seemed to have been generated by his fist, allowing the bloody light to surge in without a sound. The bizarre and terrifying follow-up that it carried was completely cut off. The two fists were close to each other, momentarily frozen in mid-air. Moko Yamashita felt his body suddenly empty, as if he had lost the strength to retract his arm. What's going on? It's completely different from what Ichii Sakata described. It's stronger and scarier. In his shock, Moko Yamashita suddenly felt the blood-red glow surging back. The force exploded, shaking his soul and body. Thump thump thump. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth as he took 3 steps back. How could Lu Qing let go of this opportunity? He immediately chased after him with the attainment formula, retracted his chi and blood, and then unleashed it again, throwing another punch. Bam 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 bam. This time he had the upper hand, using force concentration to drive 24 blizzard strikes to attack wildly. Emperor Yin and Ice Spirit intertwined, getting fiercer and fiercer. After holding on for a while, Moko Yamashita couldn't take it anymore as his opponent's strength was getting stronger. He started to retreat, but there was no end to this retreat. He kept retreating in a precarious situation. The Japanese delegation fell silent and lost their minds. It can't be, right? Moko-kun is going to lose. Bam bam bam. Lu Cheng's blood vessels were expanding, and his punches and kicks were getting stronger. He didn't care about the energy consumption and wanted to finish this battle in one go. My current stamina is slightly higher than a new inhuman, and Moko Yamashita, who is at a disadvantage, is trying his best to fight back. Every punch and kick will consume more energy than me, who has the advantage. Let's see who's afraid of who in this battle. Bam bam bam. The sound of punches and kicks filled the air, like the beating of a drum, continuously beating on the hearts of the audience. The surface of the arena was already in tatters, and there were even stones flying out. Because of this, the first few rows of the audience seats had to be empty in a battle at the inhuman level. Moko Yamashita was a very patient samurai. Even if he was in a desperate situation, even if his stamina was decreasing rapidly, he didn't panic. He just silently gathered his emotions. Finally, he held on until his emotions were sufficient. The white waves around him were dyed with the color of blood again. Dark red blood, flowing blood, and intimidating blood color. Although Lu Qing was on guard and used the forwarding formula in time, he finally slowed down a little. He saw Moko Yamashita exerting force on his legs and leaping backwards. Dodge. Can you dodge? Lu Cheng's fighting spirit surged and he gathered his chi and blood again. He stepped on a crack and pounced forward. Let's see how you can dodge in your current state. At this point in the fierce battle, both parties' blood was boiling, and their emotions were high. Fortunately, Lu Cheng's ice mirror wasn't affected. It could still reflect the surroundings and make accurate judgments. At this moment, Moko Yamashita, who was almost in front of Lu Cheng, suddenly raised his hands and formed a strange seal. His expression became solemn and his eyes were fixed on Lu Cheng. Indeed, you are very strong, a terrifying and respectable opponent. You actually forced me to this point, but the final victory will still belong to me. In Lu Cheng's eyes, the image of Moko Yamashita moving his abdomen, opening his mouth and roaring, Jia. The Jia formula of the 9 words formula. Moko Yamashita actually knew one of the 9 words formula. The Jia formula was mysterious and strange, as if it was connecting the heaven and earth to stimulate his body. Moko Yamashita's aura suddenly surged, and his previous fatigue and weak state was swept away. He was back to his peak state, and all his depleted energy was replenished. Lu Cheng's pupils shrank, and he actually felt a little depressed that he couldn't control. It wasn't easy for him to grind his inhuman opponent into a near-death state, and his Jia formula was as good as new again. How can I fight like this? Bam. The ice mirror in his heart flashed, and he put away all his negative thoughts. He rushed in front of Moko Yamashita, bulged his muscles and threw a punch. The blood-red color around Moko Yamashita swayed rapidly. It didn't turn into a scythe, but it increased his speed and strength by a few notches. He hammered his arm down in time and blocked Lu Cheng's attack with a bang. Mind wave state. He took a step forward and the blood-red color vibrated. Moko Yamashita circled Lu Cheng and launched a round of frenzied attacks, forcing him to continuously release his Dan force and desperately defend. This caused his muscles and bones to tremble, and his stamina to drop rapidly. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that his defeat was only a matter of time. Phew. The Japanese delegation heaved a sigh of relief, and their expressions relaxed, filled with anticipation. Just a little bit more, sighed the leader Zhong Ningtao. As he finished, he saw Peng Liyun and Ren Li shaking their heads. Oh, what do you mean? Zhong Ningtao was a little dumbfounded, while An Chaiyang said thoughtfully, You guys think Lu Qing still has a chance? It's not just a chance, said Peng Liyun concisely. Ren Li added, the current Muko Yamashita isn't as strong as he looks. Although she said so, Lu Qing on the arena didn't think so. He only felt that his surroundings were filled with blood-red light, and it was so thick that he couldn't help but feel a little scared. Muko Yamashita's punches and kicks were full of strength, no different from how strong he was at the beginning. No. I have to counterattack, I can't be suppressed like this all the time. Although there were changes in his emotions, Lu Qing's desire to win didn't diminish at all. Facing Muko Yamashita's blood-red fist, he took the initiative to raise his arm, covering it with a thick layer of ice armor. Crack. In the sound of the collision, the ice armor shattered. Lu Qing took the opportunity to swing his elbow joint, and struck out his forearm towards Muko Yamashita's face, assuming a counterattack stance. Muko Yamashita didn't panic and raised his other arm to block Lu Qing's second punch. His right leg was already taut, ready to pull out to forcefully interrupt his opponent's momentum. At this moment, with a snap, Lu Qing's 5-finger joints moved, and his palm suddenly opened up. 5 ice crystal spikes had formed on his fingernails, looking like auroras. Third punch. Muko Yamashita's eyes turned sharp, and he suddenly tilted his head back to avoid this fatal blow. At the same time, he took the opportunity to kick up with his right leg, drawing a white light like a razor, combining defense with offense. However, after Lu Qing's third punch, he had already jumped back and didn't make the first move. Following that, he raised both his arms, formed a hand seal, and shouted in a low and dignified voice, "Fight! Even if I lose, I'll lose with my last bullet." Lu Qing's muscles bulged, and in an instant he became tall and big. His right arm, which was placed in front of him, swung out with a strong gust of wind, full of vigor. Seeing this, Muko Yamashita's eyes lit up, and the blood light around him thickened into a scythe, wrapped around his fist and welcomed the enemy. Boom! The fist collided with the impact, and Muko Yamashita's charging body stopped, and involuntarily slid back half a meter, leaving 2 deep marks on the ground. Lu Qing, on the other hand, was covered in blood. Not only did he feel like he was struck by lightning, but he also temporarily lost his strength and took a step back. Both of them recovered at the same time. Muko Yamashita's body was glowing white, and his face was filled with fanaticism. Amidst the roars of dragons and tigers, he turned into a huge white wave, and Tang Huang took the initiative to attack. Lu Qing didn't back down and once again formed a hand seal, pointed to himself, and shouted an ancient word that would never admit defeat: "Fight!" Just as he finished his sentence, the fist placed in front of his lower abdomen struck in the opposite direction, from bottom to top, accompanied by the swelling of his muscles, and the protrusion of his blood vessels and veins. Boom! The white light dissipated and Muko Yamashita flew 2 steps back. Lu Qing stood still for a moment, almost unable to recover from the numbness and burning sensation. He could clearly feel that his spirit was reaching its limit. He abruptly exhaled, gathered his remaining strength, and visualized the heavy and hot statue of Yendi, which was as hot as the grand sun. He compressed all the remaining fire power in his body into a ball, and then controlled it with the fire god Zhu Rong, took a step forward, swung his right arm and punched out. Fire Sect's simplified physical invulnerability, internal explosion. Lu Qing chose this move as his severe warning had been neutralized previously. With a swoosh, faint flames ignited on the surface of his fist and arm, and in an instant, it was in front of Muko Yamashita, who had just stabilized his body. After this round of attacks, he wouldn't use the simplified physical invulnerability ability anymore, but he wouldn't give up until the end. He wouldn't give up until the end. White waves danced on the surface of Muko Yamashita's body, igniting his body, and swung his arm to block. Boom! With the sound of an explosion, Muko Yamashita's internal organs were in turmoil, experiencing a terrifying shock. His blood vessels were in extreme pain as though they were being burned. Lu Qing wasn't feeling well either. His head was blank and his muscles were sore. However, he suddenly felt a strong sense of joy in his heart. Because with this punch, he could feel Muko Yamashita's weakness. The wholeness formula seemed like it could only restore stamina, but not heal internal and external injuries. Muko Yamashita's previous injuries were still there, and they were accumulating. Now, they were completely triggered by the internal explosion punch. Chance. Lu Qing's spirits were lifted. He swung his arms and unleashed Zen consecutively. Bam 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 bam. He struck Muko Yamashita's blocking arms and fists. His opponent's eyes began to lose focus, his ears were ringing loudly, and his insides were tumbling non-stop. After the 11 consecutive strikes, he did the last force concentration, swelled his arms, raised his fist high, and swung it down fiercely, complemented by tremor zen. Bam! Muko Yamashita's body jumped, and his vision was filled with golden stars. His eyes, nose, ears, and mouth were all oozing dark red blood. He couldn't stand anymore and crashed onto the floor of the arena with a loud bang. He vomited bile and almost fainted. The referee looked at Lu Cheng, who looked tired but was standing straight. He raised his right hand and announced loudly, "Lu Cheng wins." Chapter 470. Lu Cheng wins. The referee's voice reverberated in the air. Most of the Japanese representatives were filled with grief and anger, especially Ichii Sakata and the other disciples of the extreme Hadu sect. They couldn't hide their pain and disappointment. How could Mukokuen lose? How could he lose? As one of the trump cards of the extreme Hadu sect, he actually lost to an opponent who was weaker than him in terms of both strength and level. This was a disgrace. This was a stain on the extreme Hadu sect. It was conceivable that the entire audience, both in the stadium and in front of the screen, would view the extreme Hadu sect as a joke. Kaori Karasawa poked her own cheeks and shook her head bitterly in silence. Mukokuen was too careless. Firstly, it was because of his own fighting style. Secondly, it was because Ichii Sakata's intel wasn't on point. Mukokuen fought too directly, too forcefully, too lacking in roundabout and gentleness. As a result, he took on his opponent's sure kill move head-on and suffered heavy injuries, leaving behind serious problems in the future. If not for this, Mukokuen would have had a good chance of winning the match even without using the wholeness formula. If he had used the wholeness formula, he would have won for sure. What a pity. Of course, Lu Cheng's improvement, changes, and performance made everyone feel pressured from the bottom of their hearts. Hearing Kaori Karasawa's sigh, Ichii Sakata and the others struggled to regain their senses. They shook off their extreme emotions and started to truly understand the battle just now. When they looked at the arena again, their gazes towards Lu Cheng had changed. There was more respect for the strong, astonishment for the miracle worker, and hatred for the terrifying enemy. The researcher with the messy hair was still in a daze, a mixture of fanaticism and confusion. Samurais in the metamorphosis stage in China were the ones with the most research value apart from the strong. The one in the arena was one of them. But Mukokuen, who had promised to collect genetic materials for himself for the Japanese, not only did he fail, he fell down, bleeding and spitting out water. It was a pathetic sight. In the stands, the dark-skinned spectators were stunned at first. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Then they raised their hands and applauded or waved. They cheered for the outstanding boxer and cheered for the weak young man who had defeated the strong young man. An unseeded fighter had defeated the monstrous number 5 seed. No matter which country it was, something like this would always be admired and praised. Lu Cheng. Lu Cheng. Amidst his shaky shouts, the sound waves gradually converged and quickly overlapped, each wave louder than the last. Lu Cheng. Lu Cheng. Listening to the shouts of the foreign people, Peng Liyun turned back to look at the arena. The leisurely feeling in his expression was swept away. There seemed to be light gathering in his eyes, just like a flash of lightning. He subconsciously looked at Renli beside him and saw his own reaction in her eyes. There wasn't much of a difference between her and him. Now, perhaps he was still half a step ahead, but the three of them were more or less on the same starting line. Next, it was a competition to see who would be the first to leap over the dragon gate and ascend to the heavens. People like them were prideful in their bones. They could recognize their own shortcomings, but they would never think that they were inferior to others. And Chaoyang fell into silence. He could only remain silent until he heard the leader, Zhong Ningtao, exclaim, "There's no such thing as empty fame." Then he nodded slightly and exhaled. In a secluded area, somewhere else in the stands, Banam, with his hands and legs wrapped in bandages, Vagar, who was wearing a general's cap, and Waku, who was resting with his eyes closed, either subconsciously clenched their fists or had a flash of silver in their eyes. Some opened their eyes and stared silently. "I told you so. Lu Cheng might win." In the live post, Unparalleled Dragon King used the almighty, smiley face. Pig Riding Knight replied, confused expression, "This is really? 1 year to dance stage, 1 year to inhuman. I feel like I'm looking at the young Dragon King, no, more like warrior sage. I won't dare to question him anymore," said Road to the arena with a dog emoji. Okamoto's fan said, snickering expression, "Yes, just kneel and lick his boots. We really have good foresight." Wonton Seller praised herself generously. "I've long had a good impression of Lu Cheng. I even gave him the petition register." An inhuman below the age of 21 with sufficient time to break through to physical invulnerability could be considered as a reserve. Ha! You didn't let me down by sleeping early and waking up early these few days. Yan Shaoling sent another voice message. Sleeping early and waking up early. A plumber eating mushrooms had recently become familiar with this baby-faced girl from the social circle. He couldn't help but mock her. Sleeping at 2 or 3 in the morning and waking up at 12 in the afternoon. So, early. Brahmin, on the other hand, said in disdain, if I didn't wake you up early little nightfall, you definitely wouldn't be able to do it. Oh yes, go to Weibo and at all-knowing man in Jianghu and tell him that he can delete his account. Hurry, hurry, hurry. All-knowing man in Jianghu was staring at the computer screen, looking at the private messages and messages that at him. His face was gloomy and his eyes were filled with panic. After a while, he made up his mind and decided to lie a little longer. Anyway, the King of Youth League of Four Kingdoms wasn't broadcasted directly. Most martial arts enthusiasts wouldn't know about this. I'll just pretend to be deaf and mute for a few weeks and pretend that I didn't see the notifications. I'll wait until Lu Qing completes his transformation and returns to China to get the 5th pin certificate. I'll attract as many fans as I can during this period. After taking a deep breath, all-knowing man in Jianghu calmed down a little and started typing furiously. He continued his long Weibo post and wanted to seize every minute and second to attract more fans. This is all money. After he finished writing, he saved it. Before he changed it, he refreshed his Weibo and was stunned to see that messages that at him were popping up like bamboo shoots after a rain. There were already over 1,000 of them. Onlookers take the front row. You have to keep your word. Don't be a coward if you're a man. I believe you're a man of your word. Head turning left and right, don't play dead. What's going on? All-knowing man in Jianghu continued reading, shocked and frightened. He studied carefully for a while and realized that a few minutes ago, a celebrity with a large number of fans, Mo Jingting, posted a video and added a sentence with a cat head emoji, becoming an inhuman mighty one after practicing martial arts for less than 2 years. Junior Master is awesome. You're my idol. All-knowing man in Jianghu turned pale and buffered the video in a daze. As expected, it was the scene of Lu Qing and Muko Yamashita exchanging their first blow. The transformation was obvious at a glance. All-knowing man in Jianghu trembled violently and almost fainted. He was in a daze for a full 5 minutes with a terrible expression. He stood up and started to walk around the room like an ant on a hot pan. He kept muttering to himself in a low voice, "Are you guys trying to force me to my death? Are you guys trying to force me to my death?" After a while he sat down with a face full of grief and hatred. He couldn't pretend that he didn't see anything anymore. His current fans were all attracted by the hype. If he didn't keep his promise, he would definitely be despised by them. Soon no one would care about him anymore. All-knowing man in Jianghu deleted his previous long Weibo post as though his parents had passed away. He retyped some new content and said, "Alright, I admit that I am a heavenly martial artist. Alright, I admit that Lu Qing is the heavenly son of the era. I'll also fulfill my end of the bet and delete this account. I'll put this post at the top of the Weibo post for a week as a statement. When the time comes, I'll officially delete this account. Those who want to continue learning about martial arts gossip and listen to my analysis of matches can follow the public number XXXXX. Phew, a week should be enough to attract quite a number of people, right?" All-knowing man in Jianghu clicked send and leaned against the back of the chair, exhausted. After that, he logged into the platform and kept looking at the increase in the number of followers. However, it was still very small. After the trending wave of the topic, it was nearing a stop. It's over, it's over. All-knowing man in Jianghu seemed to have seen stacks of cash grow wings and fly away from him. He closed his eyes and lay paralyzed on the sofa. In the passenger seat of the moving car, Yenjika made use of the time on the road to watch the battle between her Cheng and Muko Yamashita anxiously and excitedly browsed through the forum to see all-knowing man in Jianghu's Weibo post. The more she read, the brighter her smile became. In the end, she even spoke in a clear voice. Hearing this, the dance stage mighty one Du Yen who was driving turned her head to take a look. Recalling the screen she saw from the corner of her eyes, she asked, half sighing and half enviously, "Is that guy in the competition your boyfriend? How old is he and he has already started to transform? I think his name is Lu Qing? I have been practicing martial arts for many years. Until now, the inhuman stage is still a fantasy." Yeah, Yenjika pursed her lips and nodded lightly. Her eyes moved as she quietly added in her heart, actually, he's not my boyfriend anymore. In the arena, seeing Muko Yamashita struggling to stand up, Lu Qing had mixed feelings for a moment. In the battle just now, he won because of his courage. If he was scared by Muko Yamashita's wholeness formula and became depressed and dispirited, he would not dare to counterattack. If they continued to fight, he would have no choice but to be dragged to his death by Muko Yamashita and swallow the bitter fruit of defeat. To be honest, he was a little arrogant before the match. He felt that as long as he continued to perform like before, relying on the improvement and surprise brought about by the transformation, he would have a 50% chance of winning the battle with Muko Yamashita. But reality taught him that he was not the only one who could surprise others. Others could do it too. Things like pride and arrogance were not things that would not happen again in the future just because one had reflected on it in the past. They would appear frequently as one's strength increased and one's encounters increased. That was why the ancients said, reflect on yourself 3 times a day. Lu Cheng's emotions settled down and the excitement caused by the breakthrough lessened a little. Amidst the cheers of Lu Cheng from the crowd, he exchanged a bow with Muko Yamashita, who had finally stood firm. Turning around, he walked down the stone steps. Only then did he completely recover from the battle. His heart was brimming with uncontrollable joy. I won. I won against the 5th seed. I won against an inhuman stage mighty one. He quickened his pace and couldn't wait to return to his original position. His target was in Chaoyang. No, the phone in Chaoyang's hand. Chapter 471. Just as Lu Cheng was making his way back, barefooted, more than half of the lights in the Xinxiang Stadium suddenly went out, leaving only the area between the arena and the Chinese delegation. A dreamy and radiant path was formed in the darkness, complementing the shouts of Lu Cheng around him. This was a reward for the victor. This was a tribute to the hero who had defeated the stronger as the weak. Lu Cheng's mood was getting better and his footsteps became lighter and lighter. It was as if he had returned to Songqing University's martial arts arena. He began to raise his hand high and applaud. The cheers grew louder until he set foot on the grandstand, and the light was restored. Not bad. Peng Liyun had restrained his competitive attitude. He reached out with a smile and high-fived his teammate. It's up to you. Lu Qing didn't hide his joy. After high-fiving Ren Li and Chaoyang and Zhong Ningtao, he hurriedly took back his phone and logged into QQ. Yan Zhika had already sent him a message with a thumbs-up emoji saying, "You didn't let me down." Lu Qing couldn't help but smile. He felt that his good mood seemed to have doubled. He hurriedly raised his eyebrows and smiled evilly. Then what's the reward, Coach Yan? I'll personally make you a cake, won't I? Yan Zhika replied with an emoji of a little monster licking ice cream. Look, the follow-up rewards include making waffles and other small biscuits. It's enough for you to win the championship, Yan Zhika said smugly. Look, the follow-up rewards include making waffles and other small biscuits. Lu Cheng broke into laughter and was momentarily speechless. What his wife said made sense. After a few seconds he said blankly, "This is different from the reward I imagined." "What kind of reward did you imagine?" Yan Zhika seemed to be asking reasonably, but she added an emoji of "say it, I'll kill you if you say it." Lu Cheng shook his head. His lips curled up as he fearlessly replied, "Cough, for example, a couple returning home? What would a couple do after returning home?" You tainted a good song line again." Yan Zhika realized that she understood instantly. She couldn't help but sigh and reprimand him. "What are you talking about? Why can't I understand?" Lu Cheng replied in the usual tone of a girl playing dumb, accompanied by an "I'm very pure" emoji. Yan Zhika was speechless, feeling both angry and amused at the same time. She felt that her Cheng was becoming more and more thick-skinned. Then she sent an emoji of blowing a red card, and said, "Leave. I don't have a disciple like you." While Lu Cheng lowered his head, smiling as he typed and chatted, Renli took a deep look at him. She felt that at this moment, his smile was gentle and all his wariness was gone. He was not like usual. When he talked to girls, he would be polite and distant. Was this the real him? Or both sides of the contradiction? At the Japanese delegation, Muko Yamashita refused to be helped. He walked back with great difficulty on his own and said to the people around him in a deep voice, "I will remember this day. I will wash away this shame." The expressions of the other samurais turned solemn as they solemnly witnessed Muko Yamashita's oath. This was the tradition of the extreme Hadu sect. Of course, if you lose in the arena, you will have to stand up again. After the matter calmed down, the researcher with messy hair looked at the renovated arena and said to the leader impatiently, "We have to think of another way." On the other side, Lu Qing was chatting happily, sharing the joy of defeating an inhuman strong opponent with Yanjika. But not long after, Yanjika sent an emoji of whisper with a hand over your mouth, and said, "Class is starting." This meant that she could take 10, 20, or even 30 or 40 minutes to reply to a message. This meant that Lu Qing, who was in high spirits, had to restrain himself and shift his attention to other things. Although he completely understood, Lu Qing was still a little disappointed. He couldn't help but take a deep breath and look at the tattered arena. Soon, he shifted his gaze again and replied with an optimistic and humorous tone, "Yes, yes. Study hard and improve every day." After sending, he was stunned for a few seconds. Then he remembered something else and quickly switched to the contact list. He found the profile picture of the military contact, Rapid March. He clicked on it and quickly typed a few words. "Muko Yamashita from Japan's Extreme Hadu sect knows the wholeness formula." Roger. Rapid March seemed to always be online. Or maybe he's not alone. Lu Cheng's thoughts drifted. It was best to leave the matter of the wholeness formula to the military. He didn't have that many resources and manpower. Being a martial artist didn't mean that he had to do everything himself. If he had the help of powerful forces, it would be a waste not to use them. After temporarily putting this matter aside, Lu Qing finally had the time to look at other messages and messages. He found that the juniors of the Ice God sect, represented by his martial nephew Mo Jingting, had all sent congratulatory messages. They either jokingly congratulated their junior martial uncle for his great achievement in martial arts or solemnly congratulated him for his transformation to the inhuman stage. An inhuman expert under the age of 21 could be ranked in the top 10 in the entire history of the Ice God sect. Apart from Lu Qing, 5 of the remaining 9 had made the Great Leap and become physical invulnerability experts. More than half of them had made the Great Leap. Considering the threshold of instant success, this was a very high probability. Lu Qing had already learned from Yanjika that Mo Jingting had purposely posted on Weibo, forcing all-knowing man in ganghood to step up and fulfill the bet. Hence, he replied politely with a thank you. After dealing with these matters, he secretly looked at all-knowing man in ganghood's Weibo and browsed the forum. He found that En Chaoyang had almost been exposed. He couldn't help but sigh that this guy wasn't very reliable. Although he had embarrassed himself a few times, overall he was still the most reliable one. Just as the arena was undergoing emergency repairs, the other arena was ready. The second match of the quarterfinals was about to begin. Suddenly Lu Qing felt something. He raised his head and looked at the aisle. He saw a woman in a suit walking over leisurely, staring at him without hiding anything. Beside her were 2 men in staff attire. She looked like a mix of Xinjiang and Western descent. Her facial features were exquisite and elegant. She was in her 30s and had a mature charm. "Hello, I'm Catherine, a reporter from Fulua TV station. Can I do an interview with you?" The woman's smile was like a spring breeze. Her English was perfect. During this period, Lu Qing had often encountered English with a heavy accent. He could barely understand a few words and often suspected that he was illiterate. He had studied for 3 years of compulsory education, 3 years of high school, and 2 years of university for nothing. Now that he suddenly encountered a language that he could almost understand, he was moved. Indeed, the one at fault wasn't me but the others from Xinjiang. Without waiting for him to speak, Zhong Ningtao beside him spoke in fluent English. "Sure, Miss Catherine. Where are your credentials and your camera team?" When it comes to negotiations, it's still up to the leader. Lu Qing and the rest looked at each other and thought to themselves. Catherine took out her credentials and passed it to Zhong Ningtao. She smiled and said, "This is an impromptu interview. I don't have a camera team." Lu Qing's performance just now was very good. Everyone liked it, including me. I would like to know more. Originally, such interviews weren't arranged for the wild card team. "Thank you, Miss Catherine. You can ask your questions now. You have 5 minutes. Zhong Ningtao looked at his watch and said with a smile, "I'll do the translation and communication." After receiving the press credentials, Catherine looked at Lu Qing and asked with a smile, "Hello, Mr. Lu. You don't seem very old. From your information, I think you're only 20 years and 6 months old?" Although Lu Qing could understand, he still waited for Zhong Ningtao to finish translating before replying in Chinese. "Yes, still half a year away from 21. After listening to Zhong Ningtao's translation, Catherine continued asking with interest, "Then what's your current occupation? Have you entered the professional martial arts circle?" Lu Qing answered frankly, I'm still studying. I'm still a student. Oh, you're still a student? You can already set up your own martial arts club in Xinjiang and have a lot of followers. Catherine couldn't hide her surprise. With the strength that Lu Qing had displayed, he was already a representative of a major sect in Xinjiang. He was qualified to be called a master. But he was still a student. Lu Qing held back his laughter and waited for Zhong Ningtao to complete the procedures before pointing at Peng Liyun and Ren Li. Is it strange to be a student? They're still students and haven't graduated. At this point he couldn't help but complain. If you're a reporter from Japan, you won't be surprised. Over there, the ones who save the world are all students. After saving the world, they have to go back to school. The leader probably couldn't translate such words, so it didn't hurt to say it. As expected, while Peng Liyun and the rest laughed, Zhong Ningtao only translated the first half of the sentence. Oh, that's really strange. Is this the latest trend in China? Catherine exclaimed in shock. After calming down, she asked Lu Qing about other things, such as how long he had been practicing martial arts and what competitions he had participated in. She received even more shocking answers. 5 minutes passed quickly. She looked at her watch, exhaled, and said with a bright smile, "You're really an amazing person. It's an honor to interview you." "Thank you." Lu Qing smiled. In the interview just now, with the leaders filtering, he could answer however he wanted and fully displayed his ability to complain. Catherine waved goodbye. Just as she was about to turn around, she suddenly smiled sweetly and said, "Actually, I know Chinese. My maternal grandmother is a very knowledgeable Chinese. However, when we interview we have to use English or Xinjiang language." Lu Qing was stunned at first, then his face turned red. "So you actually understood everything I said just now? Then didn't I just perform a live stand-up comedy?" As Catherine left, unrestrained laughter sounded around him. It came from Peng Liyun and Chaoyang, Renli and Zhong Ningtao. Damn it, it's all because of Xiaoming. How embarrassing. Lu Qing covered his face and sighed. After Vagar and Banam easily defeated their opponents in less than 2 minutes, the fourth match was about to begin. Peng Liyun versus the third seed, Waku, an ascetic monk who practiced the arhat fruit. Chapter 472. The Theravada sect belonged to one of the branches of primitive Buddhism, commonly known as Hinayana Buddhism. Of course, they would never call themselves that and hated others calling them that. They were also against the so-called Mahayana Buddhism of cultivating the Bodhisattva Tao. According to the views of the three Semitic sects, heresy was more detestable than heretics. This sect followed strict precepts, followed the traditions, and practiced asceticism. With this 16 insight wisdom and 4 holy truths as the core, they cultivated the arhat fruit. Arhats were also known as self-attaining arhats. They lacked the desire to deliver all living beings. On the basis of recognizing that the world was bitter and all things were illusory, they only sought for personal liberation. On the other hand, before completely transcending samsara, they were all very strong individually, especially in terms of spirit. They were even stronger than their peers. Waka was such a monk. He had cultivated the 16 insight wisdom, to the 11th wisdom, Xingsa wisdom. He recognized the emptiness of the body and mind and no longer had any attachment to it. He was filled with indifference and alienation. His spirit was in an extraordinary state and his strength was terrifying. The fact that he was ranked as the third seed was proof of that. He wouldn't be much weaker than Peng Liyun, Lu Qing thought to himself. Various situations regarding Waka flashed across his mind. At this moment he heard the sound of the broadcast. He saw Peng Liyun standing up slowly. His eyes were focused and no longer wandering. Smiling to himself, Lu Qing clenched his fist and shouted, "All the best." "Yeah." Peng Liyun responded with a fist bump. His muscles and fascia were trembling slightly. It was enough to show how excited he was. Seeing this, Lu Qing didn't know why, but he felt like mourning for Waka for 5 seconds. The first machine of Shangqing sect had finished charging. After bumping fists with Renli and Chaoyang and Zhong Ningtao, Peng Liyun turned around and walked towards the arena. With every step he took, his surroundings seemed to become darker and more oppressive. It was as though lead clouds were about to form. Thunderclaps could be heard, sweeping away all disharmony in the world. Such power seemed to have materialized and was comparable to an experienced inhuman. However, Waka's expression didn't change. He was still full of disgust, but his eyes were deeper. It was as though he had seen through the emptiness around him and wasn't affected at all. Peng Liyun was neither disappointed nor dejected by this. Instead, bright lights converged within his eyes like lightning that was about to strike down, and his battle intent grew denser. When the two of them stood in their predetermined positions, the referee didn't delay. He raised his right hand and waved it down fiercely. Begin. Peng Liyun lowered his waist and condensed his chi and blood. His body immediately bounced up like a cloud and flew out. However, what accompanied this light leap forward was a loud bang and the violent shaking of the arena, causing Waka's body to sway. His flash strike was no longer the same as before. In a flash, Peng Liyun appeared in front of Waku. He shook his right arm and turned it into a huge hammer. Along with the sizzling silvery white lightning, he swung it towards his opponent fiercely. Waka didn't move from beginning to end. He didn't even try to control the shaking of his body. Facing Peng Liyun's hammer, he sighed softly. He simply took a step forward and straightened his leg to welcome the punch. With a bang, the disgust and abandonment in his eyes grew denser. His skinny body seemed to be filled with air, and his sallow skin turned golden. His fist accurately landed on his opponent's wrist. Sizzle. Silver light danced. Waka seemed to have touched the socket with his bare hands. His body trembled and couldn't continue with the following actions. However, his expression and gaze didn't change at all. It was as though he wasn't the one who was shocked. On the other hand, Peng Liyun instantly felt various kinds of discomfort. It was as though he was being exposed to the sun and rain, suffering from unbearable hunger, and suffering from the various kinds of pain caused by lack of water. This made him slow down for a while before he returned to the battle. He wasn't able to seize the opportunity when Waka lost control of his body temporarily. Heart Reflection Fist, a secret fist technique of the Ascendant sect. Using one's heart to reflect the other's heart, allowing the other to experience various kinds of feelings that one had experienced before. At this moment, the radiance in Peng Liyun's eyes gathered again, as though it had illuminated the surroundings. The visualization in his mind changed and condensed into a green jade talisman that was suspended in the air. On it, there were lightning patterns that intertwined to form complex seal words. Bam! He straightened his body and his muscles swelled. Without dodging, he took a step forward and extended his body. He clenched his fist and struck. Thunder Sect's simplified physical invulnerability, Thunder Seal. Seeing this, Lu Qing couldn't help but be speechless. He scolded jokingly, "He's fooling around again." Since he knew the uniqueness of the Heart Reflection Fist, Peng Liyun's best choice was to follow the momentum of the Machine Fist, driven by the Dan Force, and launch a flurry of attacks, not giving Waka the opportunity to reflect the other's heart. However, he was now using a simplified physical invulnerability to attack head-on without dodging the needle. Other than wanting to experience more of the wonders of the Heart Reflection Fist, there was no other explanation. Facing an expert who was also at the inhuman level, he actually dared to let his opponent use all his strength. You used the word frivolous, well? And Chaoyang, who was cold on the outside but gentle on the inside, nodded in agreement. Ren Li, on the other hand, was puzzled as she looked at the field. She suspected that Peng Liyun had a deeper motive behind not making the best response. Yes, that must be it. Lu Qing shook his head and laughed again. What if he loses by fooling around? What else can we do? Anyway, you are already in the top 8, Ren Li is 90% sure, and Chaoyang has a chance too. Eliminating one would be giving face to the host. Zhong Ningtao wasn't nervous at all as he laughed. Furthermore, this can teach Peng Liyun a lesson so that he won't dare to be arrogant in the future. Isn't that great? Do you think that's possible? Lu Qing didn't look at the leader and looked at Chaoyang. Would the great demon king accept such a lesson? I don't think it's possible. Chaoyang sighed. Me too. Lu Qing followed suit and sighed. While they were talking, the situation on the arena had changed. Facing Peng Liyun's Thunder Seal, Waka didn't try to avoid it. His eyes showed that he had seen through the vicissitudes of life. A faint golden light surrounded his body. Then he flicked his arm, clenched his fist and swung it upwards. Strength against strength, strength against strength. Boom. Their fists collided. Gold and green intersected. Muscles and veins were exposed. A sudden buzzing sound exploded in mid-air, as if there was a thunderous explosion. Peng Liyun's vision turned dark. His soul reflected back inexplicably. He felt the aging of his body and the obvious weakness that grew with time. To an expert who was used to relying on himself to use martial arts, this was the cruelest and most painful thing. The strength that he had gained through hard work for most of his life was gradually lost because of his aging body. In the end, there was nothing left. Even a half-grown kid who had just entered the martial arts world might not be able to subdue him. How feeble, how desolate it was. Heart Reflection Punch, old, A move that was the opposite of the previous bitter. Although Peng Liyun was in his prime and couldn't really understand this kind of sorrow, being in the Shanqing sect, he had seen the pain of his elders when they were old. He had seen the painful moans of his elders when they were old. He had seen the helplessness of being paralyzed on the bed before death. He had long felt the same way. Now that Waku had poured all the experiences of aging into his mind, it triggered his memories. The fear that was buried deep in his heart suddenly exploded. In an instant he was stunned on the spot. His face was dripping with cold sweat. It was as if he had fallen into a nightmare and couldn't wake up. He didn't even think of forming the Thunder God statue to suppress his soul. Under his punch, Waku's sleeves were torn. His arm that was glowing with golden light was charred black. His whole body kept twitching and was completely paralyzed. He also didn't know what was going on. However, he had worked hard to train his body. He had an extremely strong resistance to pain, burns and lightning strikes. He was the first to recover. With a bitter expression, he turned his back and punched with his left fist. Seeing that Peng Liyun's already smooth fist was about to hit his opponent's throat, for some reason, Peng Liyun seemed to have received a double shock. He suddenly woke up from his old nightmare. His eyes regained their luster and gathered the essence of life, creating a white haze in his eyes. The whirlpool in his body was spinning crazily. The sound of a motor reverberated in the surroundings. In front of Waku's fist, it turned into a piece of paper. It was blown backwards by the wind pressure, and just happened to avoid that fatal blow. This was a very simple application of the attraction of yin and yang and the repulsion of the same poles. In the two electric shocks just now, Peng Liyun used his extremely strong control and the core technique of the Thunder Sect's magnet sect to place a layer of electric charge on the surface of Waku's body that could be maintained for a few seconds. It was exactly the same as the electric charge on the surface of his body. Therefore, when his opponent attacked, he was affected and stacked with the absolute reaction. With this, he was able to get rid of the feeling from the heart reflection punch, and use the magnet sect's technique in time to salvage the situation. Waku wasn't depressed. The heart reflection punch turned again and displayed the killer move of this technique, 6 paths of reincarnation punch. From his point of view, the 6 paths of reincarnation didn't only exist in the Buddhist scriptures. It also existed in the world. It wasn't an illusory thing but a reflection of the human heart. Among them, the path of the hungry ghost was another name for unrestrained greed. The path of the beast was another name for unable to control one's instincts. The path of Asura was the bloodthirsty and violent desire in everyone's body. The path of humanity was the manifestation of karma entanglement of love and hatred. The path of hell was the extreme of humanity. It embodied the pain and torment caused by love, hatred, jealousy and so on. It was the 2 sides of humanity. The path of heaven referred to the state of mind of a Buddhist who had achieved success in his cultivation. He had distanced himself from the rest of the 5 paths and obtained peace and freedom. However, this state of mind had not completely transcended and had not jumped out of the cycle of reincarnation. At any time he could be affected by karma and be controlled by his emotions, falling back into pain again. As the saying goes, one thought of peace, one thought of hell. The 6 paths of reincarnation, the various manifestations of the mortal world. A layer of golden light appeared in Waku's eyes. It was dark and gloomy, seducing the soul and causing the heart to sink. Bam! He raised his fist from his waist, bringing out a clear and crisp sound. There wasn't any other phenomenon. The path of the hungry ghost, of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Peng Liyun punched out again and used the fiery thunderbolt to block this move. However, he didn't experience the feeling of suffering and aging like before. Therefore, he didn't care and started to attack first. However, unknowingly he was getting more and more impatient as he fought. He was ignoring the situation and environment more and more. It was as if he wanted to eat his fill in one go and wanted to find the flaws of his opponent as soon as possible. Waku patiently defended. He used both his fists and legs and occasionally used the path of the hungry ghost. He defended steadily. Other than his skin being charred black and his body being paralyzed, he didn't show any other symptoms. As they fought fiercely to the edge of the arena. As Waku moved his body to the side, Peng Liyun's body fell forward and almost fell down. His back swayed and he suddenly woke up. He felt that his state of mind was different. He quickly visualized the Thor's statue of the purest yang and suppressed all the distracting thoughts. When Waku saw this, the golden light in his eyes suddenly turned red and turned into a thick blood-red color. The 6 paths of reincarnation fist could also be used on himself. Arhat with one thought, Azura with one thought. Kacha. Waku's body seemed to have expanded and became taller by a few centimeters. His muscles were bulging and he charged towards Peng Leyun with full strength, wanting to knock him off the arena directly. At this point, it was already too late to wake up. Chapter 473. The distance between them was less than 2 steps. With Waku's speed after transforming into Azura, it would only take a split second for him to get close to Lu Cheng. Lu Cheng had nowhere to hide. Peng Leyun, who had suppressed his impatience, only did one thing, which was to jump up. He jumped up in a weird posture and stretched his body backwards as if he was jumping horizontally in midair. This was the only way for him to avoid the Azura strike. If he jumped up, down or forward, he would definitely not be able to dodge in time below his chest and would definitely be hit by Waku. Even if his bones were not broken, he would still be pushed out of the arena by the ferocious force and would not be able to turn the situation around. Of course, his current actions were only to avoid the initial collision. How could Waku not have subsequent changes and connections? Bam! Waku's body sank and broke through the air barrier. He stopped at the edge of the arena. His eyes were bloodshot. He bent his legs and was about to take the opportunity to throw a punch upwards. He soared into the sky and fell. At this moment, Peng Leyun, who was in midair, had a bright glow in his eyes. It was as if lightning was striking down. His palms suddenly clapped together as if he was clapping. Boom. If it was any other martial artist, they would definitely feel their mind shaking and their actions would definitely slow down. However, Waku had already transformed into a violent and bloodthirsty fighting machine. He was filled with such desires and could no longer be clear-headed and rational. He had to wait for the effects of the fist to fade before he could return to the path of the heavenly immortals. Therefore, although his mind was shaken, his body moved instinctively and was not affected at all. He had already punched upwards. This was also the reason why he had to use the path of the Azura on himself in the end. He had to eliminate external disturbances and end the battle quickly without leaving any chances. In the midst of the lightning, Peng Leyun, who was about to land, separated his palms and pulled out an extremely thin silver-white electric light. When the electric light appeared, it instantly slashed onto Waku's body. It slashed his body and caused his clothes and skin to emit green smoke. During this moment, Peng Leyun visualized many thick thunderclouds in his mind. They stacked on top of each other and had a total of 9 layers. They were filled with extreme yang and violence. This seemed to complement the heaven's punishment. Rumble. There was another deafening roar of thunder. A silvery white bolt of lightning struck down like a shortened version of lightning. However, if one looked closely, they would find that it was Peng Leyun, whose entire arm was wrapped in lightning, stretching his body. He unleashed his Dan force and swung it in the air like a punishment from heaven. Bang! Their fists collided. One's muscles bulged, his blood vessels protruded, and his veins popped. The other's electric snakes danced as if it was caught in a net. Crack! Waku, who had transformed into an Azura, landed on both of his feet and sank into the ground. His body trembled again and his muscles twitched uncontrollably. Peng Leyun bounced up a little before landing again. He bent his leg in midair and struck out with his knee covered in bright electric sparks, aiming straight for his opponent's chest. Rumble. Amidst the thunderous roar, Waku raised his left arm and placed it in front of his body. He used his strength to block the fatal knee strike. He then flipped backwards and threw his opponent out, avoiding the following consecutive kicks. The part of his arm that was hit by the knee was charred black. There was a burnt smell and it was trembling non-stop. Seeing that he was about to be thrown out of the arena, Peng Leyun suddenly retracted his blood and chi. He did a somersault and straightened his right leg. Electric sparks surrounded it as he chopped down with his battle axe. Rumble. 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 He was like a sparrowhawk. He constantly borrowed the force to fly up and attack while landing. He would punch, elbow, knee, kick, or even turn his entire body into heaven's punishment lightning and fling it out. He was fighting fiercely with Azura Waku at the edge of the arena. He was walking on the line of defeat. Rumble. 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 In the eyes of Lu Cheng and the rest, there seemed to be silvery white lightning striking down continuously on the arena. There were 9 consecutive strikes, each brighter than the previous one. It was like the legendary Heaven's Punishment. 9 Heavens Ensemble? And Chaoyang blurted out. This was the 7th move of the Thunder Sect, a unique physical invulnerability skill. No. Renly shook her head. It should be the dance stage martial arts that he created by imitating. Lu Qing, who was at the side, was filled with emotions. He admired Peng Liyun from the bottom of his heart. He relied on the Jin Dan to barely catch up with Peng Liyun in 2 years. However, in other aspects of martial arts, there was still a big gap between him and Peng Liyun. Peng Liyun was already able to imitate the unique skills of his predecessors and create his own moves. He was still in the process of learning and mastering them. This was due to both accumulation and talent. He needed to be like the Dragon King. He had to be more hardworking, more proficient, more knowledgeable, and more challenging opponents to make up for and catch up. Rumble. 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 After 9 strikes, Waka's entire body was numb. His muscles were trembling and the blood in his eyes faded. He woke up from the Azura path, and instinctively took 2 steps back. With this step back, Peng Liyun finally landed on the ground. He used Dan Force to activate Machine Punch, and seized the opportunity when Waka was recovering from the 6 paths of reincarnation. He threw out punches that left afterimages behind. Using his footsteps as a pivot, he changed his position from time to time, causing Waka to be flustered. Da-da-da-da-da. Peng Liyun moved his joints and tendons. He didn't stop attacking. Finally, Waka's movements became sluggish due to the accumulation of numbness. Peng Liyun continued to attack and opened up his stance. He stretched out his hand and pressed on the surface of his body. Bzzz. The lightning snake shone brightly. Waka seemed to have been hit by high-voltage electricity and was sent flying. His skin was charred in many places. Thump. He, who was originally at the edge of the arena, landed on the surrounding area. His limbs were twitching and white foam was coming out from the corner of his mouth. Peng Liyun stopped his actions. His face was dripping with sweat. His mouth opened and closed continuously as he panted. His eyes were filled with excitement and fatigue. He was almost at his limit. The referee glanced at him and raised his right hand. He announced loudly, "Peng Liyun wins." The crowd let out a huge sigh mixed with some cursing and scolding. The biggest hope of the host was destroyed just like that. Lu Qing was amazed and speechless. He couldn't help but laugh at Chaoyang, Renli and Zhong Ningtao. "I thought he was going to be reckless today." "Me too." And Chaoyang agreed with a sigh. At this moment, Peng Liyun had slightly regained his breath. Seeing Waka being helped away, he couldn't help but mutter to himself, what a pity that he didn't get to witness the wonders of the other 4 moves of the reincarnation punch. He turned around and walked back to the spectator stand with slightly weak steps. He walked to the front of Lu Qing and the rest and gave them a high five to celebrate. After doing all this, he laughed at himself and said, "I almost lost just now." Hearing this, Lu Qing and Chaoyang looked at each other and burst out laughing. "You really almost lost. What's wrong?" Peng Liyun looked at them blankly. "It's nothing," Lu Qing answered without hesitation. He added, "Keep it up. Continue to be reckless. The more reckless you are when you meet me, the better." At this point, the first 4 groups of the top 16 had finished their matches. Lu Qing and the rest followed Zhong Ningtao back to the hotel. As 2 of them had to prepare for the next day's match and 2 of them were almost exhausted, they didn't think of going out for a stroll or supper. They went back to their own rooms obediently, which disappointed some of the people who were watching them. After washing up, Lu Qing reported the result of the battle to his mother and chatted with Yan Zhika for a while. Finally, he couldn't bear the mental fatigue and said goodnight in advance. He fell asleep without doing the concealment of spirit and qi. In a daze, he felt like he was back in the provincial youth tournament. He had just defeated Zhang Zhutong and was drained of energy. He had a headache and nausea. He had to hurry up and recover in order to prepare for the finals. In a daze, he seemed to be leaning on Yan Zhika's supple thighs again. She was massaging his head with moderate strength. There was a familiar smell at the tip of his nose and a voice that seemed to come from the heavens sounded in his ears. "When you're old and your hair is white," the voice sounded and faded. Lu Qing suddenly woke up and saw the ceiling in the dark. It was quiet all around. He was the only one in the dark. He looked at his phone and found that it was only 2 in the morning. He felt an inexplicable sense of loss. He took a deep breath and didn't disturb her. Concealment of spirit and qi, he went back to sleep. The next day he woke up on time before dawn. He had regained his energy and chatted with Yan Zhika energetically. He continued the training of the metamorphosis stage and felt that his body was getting stronger little by little. In the evening, the first 4 groups of the top 16 started their matches. Ren Li, stimulated by Lu Qing and Peng Liyun yesterday, performed extremely well and defeated her opponent easily. She and Kaori Karasawa advanced to the top 8. However, and Chaoyang, who was the last to fight, was in trouble. His opponent was Waku's junior, number 6 seed Gusai. Even though he had yet to reach the level of walking disappearing wisdom, he had an extremely strong physique. Coupled with the heart reflection fist and other techniques, his combat power was equivalent to that of an inhuman. Furthermore, the martial arts that attacked one's soul was a counter to Chaoyang's greatest reliance, lake and mirror wisdom. This caused Chaoyang to quickly fall into a passive state. Chapter 474. Bam Bam Bam. Every punch and kick of Gusai contained an exaggerated amount of power. Instead of making a crisp sound, they continuously exploded the air, creating a commotion similar to that of a dance stage martial artist like Chaoyang. During this process, the plump Gusai didn't appear clumsy at all. Instead, he was as agile as a leopard cat, jumping up and down, moving back and forth, seizing the upper hand. Chaoyang had to divert some of his attention to maintain the lake and mirrored wisdom to resist the hunger, thirst, exposure to the sun, and pain brought about by his opponent's heart reflection punch. He fell into a passive state, relying on his preemptive senses, judgment, and continuous outbursts to barely hold on and not show any signs of defeat. After a series of frenzied attacks, Gusai saw that he couldn't take down his opponent. The look in his eyes changed, revealing the vicissitudes of life, like an old man going through the final stages of his life. It made people feel the same way, thinking of their own inevitable ending. Heart reflection punch, old. Gusai's fist technique changed, no longer creating the slightest sound of wind, but filled with the desolation of the setting sun. Bam. Chaoyang pushed his feet inward, moved his knees, twisted his body, swung his arms, and punched out his right fist. It collided with Gusai's bowl-sized fist, creating a dull sound and setting off a gust of wind in all directions. As his arm bounced back, he suddenly felt that his energy was insufficient and his body was weak. It was as if he was watching himself gradually grow old and weak. His skin was shriveled, lost its luster, and became wrinkled. He did not even want to take a look at it, for fear that he would have a nightmare because of it. As an artistic youth who liked to read novels and listen to love songs, Chaoyang's heart was undoubtedly very delicate. He often felt sentimental about the passing of spring, and sometimes he would think of growing old. Now that he was truly experiencing aging, he couldn't control himself. Fortunately, his tranquil soul was only stirred up by the storm, and the round mirror was not broken because of it. Fortunately, he was still young and his elders were still around. Before he joined the Shanghai Club, there were very few old people who practiced martial arts around him. He lacked deep feelings for such things. Only then did he manage to stabilize his emotions and suppress the storm. He did not break out in cold sweat like Peng Liyun. He even took the opportunity to take a deep breath, gather his qi and blood, and counterattack with explosive force, trying to set off a torrential momentum. Gusai's pupils constricted. He didn't dare to be careless. The fats on his body bulged out, becoming chiseled. A terrifying explosive force and a flickering dark golden luster erupted. With a swing of the demon-subduing pestle, he forcefully broke Chaoyang's follow-up attack. He knew that his biggest problem was the heavy burden and the high consumption of energy. His body was prone to overload. Before he mastered Xing Shiji and stepped into the so-called inhuman level in China, he couldn't fight for a long time. Therefore, he made corresponding preparations. He planned to force his opponent to take his fist of the 6 paths of reincarnation head-on when he had the upper hand. Bam bam bam. After another round of heart seal punch and physical strength, Gusai finally found his chance. A dark golden luster appeared in his eyes. Under the light, his fist seemed to be dyed with a colorful halo. With the flowing 5 skandhas, he swung his arm in the opposite direction and hit his opponent. Fist of the 6 paths of reincarnation, the path of man. Chaoyang was forced to the point where he couldn't dodge. He could only immerse his mind into the mirror-like lake of tranquility and shake out his arm to block the fist. Bam! The dull sound was like a drum beating on his heart. Chaoyang suddenly heard a song that he hadn't listened to in a long time. After an entire summer, the sadness didn't get any better. Driving on the endless road, I feel like I'm leaving myself. It was a sad melody that he would repeatedly listen to in high school when he was in junior high. Often he would feel so sad that he couldn't control himself. That year, that month, his childhood sweetheart said to him, "Sorry, I still can't find the feeling, let's just be friends." Becoming better was the key to winning a girl's heart. But even if you became better, the girl might not fall for you. When they were young, the two of them could hold an umbrella and run in a rainstorm, drenching each other but laughing freely. But when they grew up, they could only nod at each other and greet each other when they passed each other. They were so indifferent that it was as if they didn't have many entanglements. Because of the loss of this relationship, he had once listened to songs night after night, blurring his vision and grieving his heart. From then on, he fell in love with loneliness, the feeling of being immersed in his own world, and the beautiful yet painful lyrics of the song. "It's a pity that it wasn't you who stayed with me until the end," another old song floated over. And Chaoyang was filled with disappointment. He felt that the wound that had healed long ago was clearly exposed again. It was no longer bloody, but it still hurt when touched. Because of this, he lost control of his emotions. He wanted to drink, he wanted to sing, he wanted to vent. This reminded him of a song that he had been listening to frequently during this period of time. It was an old song that he only found out about recently because of a program. That old and hoarse voice of a man, every word struck his heart. "Like the waning moon or the ebbing tide of the sea, a piece of my heart was torn away by you. After so many years, the regret is still there. There is a kind of wound that will never heal." That's right, how could he forget that kind of regret? That was his entire youth. That was an entire part of his past life. "I used a heavy snow to cover it up, to bury the lost love deep in my heart. Every time I say that my feelings are still blank, no one can tell that I'm lamenting." The melody was sorrowful, and the song entered his heart. And Chaoyang's heart was quickly emptied. Regret surged and broke through the dam. The lake in mirrored wisdom could no longer be maintained. With a crack, it broke completely. His emotions were like a flood, naturally outlining his visualization. His body straightened and expanded slightly. His fist struck out gently but violently, blocking Gusai's palm that was about to land on his vitals. Gusai's palm took the opportunity to reap the victory while he was in a daze. Bam! Gusai, who had a strong physical talent, was sent flying. His eyes were filled with shock and disbelief, as though he had encountered a real flood. But he quickly realized that something was wrong. And Chaoyang didn't take the opportunity to attack again after the punch. Instead, he stood in the same spot, panting. His eyes were filled with disappointment and faint sadness. Gusai didn't think too much about it. He seized the opportunity and pounced forward, launching a new round of attacks. This time, and Chaoyang, who didn't have the lake in mirrored wisdom, was flustered. He opened up his stance, closed in, and knocked over with an elbow strike. The referee heaved a sigh of relief and raised his hand to announce, "Gusai wins." The entire stadium erupted in cheers. The host country finally had a representative in the quarterfinals. And Chaoyang didn't suffer any injuries, but his arm was a little sore. He flipped over and stood up. With a gloomy expression, he clasped his hands at Gusai and said, "Thank you." "Yes, thank you. If not for today's battle, I'm afraid it would take me a long time to understand the true meaning of a flood. If I'm still controlling my emotions, how can I talk about a flood that breaks the dam? Only when my emotions are fully released and I don't need to be calm. Only when my body and mind are united can I unleash a true flood." Unfortunately, this was a sudden understanding without much practice. After one punch, my body was drained and I lost control of my emotions. Not only did I fail to grasp the opportunity to win, I even showed signs of defeat. After finishing his sentence, and Chaoyang turned around and returned to the spectator stand while Gusai looked confused. What a pity. Lu Qing and the rest could see that he had comprehended something and almost won. They couldn't help but sigh. "It's all right." And Chaoyang smiled calmly, indicating that he didn't need any consolation. At this point, the quarterfinals were all decided. The drawing of lots would begin later. There was no longer any principle of avoidance. The top four would be decided the day after tomorrow. While waiting, Lu Cheng and Yanjika chatted for a while. Both felt that at this stage, there was a high probability of drawing an inhuman mighty one. Therefore it didn't matter. 15 minutes later, the arena was cleaned up and rearranged. After some nonsense, the first name was drawn. Miluo Vagar. The second seed, Vagar, was a strong character who was hailed as the future overlord. Following which, the guest took out another round ball. Looking at the name, she let out a tantalizing exclamation. After a dozen seconds, she seemed to have recovered. With a sharp voice, she announced, "Japan, Kaori Karasawa." The first seed, Kaori Karasawa. The two hot favorites for this year's competition were going to meet in the quarterfinals. One of them was destined to meet his end. The atmosphere in the arena heated up. Lu Qing soon heard his name, China Lu Qing. If I'm lucky, I'll be the only non-seed, non-wildcard contestant left. If I'm unlucky, I'll be facing Peng Liyun. Lu Qing thought to himself, not changing his posture. After a few seconds, the guest drew his opponent. Showing the round ball to the crowd, she announced, Nanjing Bantam, the 4th seed Bantam. Not bad, not bad. Lu Qing heaved a sigh of relief. This wasn't bad, but it wasn't bad either. He was indeed weaker than his opponent, but it didn't mean that he had no hope of winning. At this moment, his heart suddenly stirred as a certain subtle thought appeared in his mind. There were only 4 contestants left. It wasn't impossible for such a duel to happen. While he was deep in thought, the guest had already drawn the host for the 3rd duel. China Peng Liyun. Then she took out one of the 3 remaining balls. Smiling, she announced, China Renli. Damn, it's really like this. A duel of fate. Lu Qing laughed. Beside him, Renli opened her eyes wide. Her expression was one of excitement. The quarterfinals this time was really intense. Just the thought of it made one's blood boil. There was no need to draw anymore. The host, Gu Sai, would be facing the non-seed, non-wildcard contestant. Chapter 475. Vagar stood up as soon as the lot drawing was over. His tall and majestic figure cast a shadow around him. He pressed down on his general cap, looked at the arena and snorted. He then left the Xinxiang Stadium without looking back. In the Japanese representative team, the only remaining Kaori Karasawa clenched her fist and tapped her chin lightly. Her pink lips pouted as if she had been wronged. However, there was no emotion in her eyes. Nanjing's Bantam rubbed the bandage on his hand. He turned his head and gave Lu Qing a cold stare, as though he was sizing up a dangerous prey. Then he walked along the corridor and silently made his way to the main door. Beside Lu Qing, and Chaoyang put on his headphones again and immersed himself in the world of music. Renli glanced at Peng Liyun and took half a step away from him, as if trying to draw a line between friend and foe. From now on, we are no longer teammates. Peng Liyun, on the other hand, seemed to have thought of something. He stood there in a daze, ignoring all the gazes. Lu Qing shook his head silently. He picked up his phone and sent the matchup for the quarterfinals to Yan Zhika. The girl seemed to be worried about him. She replied quickly during class. Covering mouth, laughing expression. I was worried about my Cheng when I saw the 4th seed after the 5th seed. However, after seeing the battle between Vagar, Kaori Karasawa, Peng Liyun and Renli, I felt that it was nothing. Happiness comes from comparison. I think so too. That's why I'm in a good mood. Lu Qing typed leisurely with a smile on his face. With that settled, Yan Zhika put aside her distracting thoughts and listened more attentively. Her reply speed slowed down again. Lu Qing, on the other hand, browsed the forum while waiting for Chaoyang and Renli to head to the changing room for a shower. Hey, so shady. Eternal nightfall, Yan Shaoling sighed as she drew the lot. I've never seen such an obvious shady scene. Even a primary school student like Lingling can see through it. Covering face expression, Brahmin sighed. Unparalleled Dragon King laughed. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. It's normal for the host to be taken care of. In order to sell tickets, they have to get a spot in the top 4. Otherwise, why would they work so hard to organize this event? As long as the referees are not biased or blind, and there are no other problems, everything will be fine. That's right. I think this is acceptable. No matter what, the cheat team, no, our wildcard team has also secured a spot in the top 4, right? Road to the arena said, smiling expression, this is acceptable for Lu Qing. Although he didn't get the 2 weakest brothers, at least he didn't meet the strongest ones. Yes. That's why I didn't scold him. I even wanted to laugh. This must be because I've helped Lu Qing accumulate good karma. Yan Shaoling sent a proud emoji. Okamoto's fan asked curiously, how did you do it? Everyone who participated in the discussion was interested in this question. They kept urging him to continue. Even Lu Qing himself pretended to be a bystander and asked a question. Seeing this, Yan Shaoling stammered, I went to watch a movie with my best friend in the afternoon. After we finished, she suggested we go for a walk. As we walked, we both realized that neither of us knew the way. You mentioned this before. You said you roared at her. Tilting head, puzzled expression. Brahmin asked, this has nothing to do with accumulating good karma, right? Yan Shaoling replied, pointing fingers expression, but when I roared at her, I stepped on a pile of sh*t. Haha, you've accumulated a lot of good karma. Little Nightfall, you should come when we meet next time. You're so cute, I like you so much. Wonton Seller laughed loudly. Unparalleled Dragon King teased, with your love for such asterisk T shouldn't you be ecstatic? Manual funny emoji, that's a very interesting reply, a plumber eating mushrooms agreed. After a few more teasing words, Invincible Punch changed the topic and sighed, ever since Mo Jingting hung up that video, I've realized that the number of people paying attention to this King of Youth Pro League has increased. There will be more to come. Peng Liyun and Ren Li's fateful duel, Kaori Karasawa and Vagar's rivalry, and Lu Cheng's challenge to an inhuman mighty one before he completes his transformation. These are all very eye-catching matches. Any one of them would be able to support the entire top 8, not to mention there are 3 of them. Sighed the moderator, Pig Riding Knight. At this age there aren't many matches like this. After watching the lot draw I'm getting excited. Unparalleled Dragon King concluded. Back at the hotel, the few of them went back to their rooms without causing any trouble. Zhong Ningtao, the leader, nodded slightly in satisfaction. Although these 4 prodigies and quasi-prodigies were different from ordinary people and weren't very reliable, at least they knew their limits and listened to his orders. They were proud but not arrogant, unlike the ones he had brought before. They were young, hot-blooded, and strong. Each and every one of them was extremely bossy and domineering. If he wasn't careful they would cause trouble. Sigh, it's true that a pot of water makes no noise but half a pot of water makes a lot of noise. After entering the room, Lu Qing took a pillow and placed it behind his back. While chatting with Yen Zhika, he leisurely browsed Weibo and forums, and repeatedly studied Banham's battle videos. Time passed quickly and soon it was 10 o'clock. Suddenly he heard knocking sounds coming from the door. Who is it? Lu Qing shouted, got off the bed and walked to the door with his phone. He boldly opened the door. At the door stood a girl with blonde hair. She had dark eyebrows, big eyes and a pretty face. She wore a nightgown that only reached the middle of her thighs. Although it wasn't revealing, it perfectly accentuated her perky breasts and slender legs. She was exceptionally attractive. Her hair was half wet and stuck to her cheeks. When she saw Lu Qing, she bit her lower lip lightly and revealed a pitiful look. She said in choppy Chinese, help me. The corner of Lu Qing's mouth twitched and he smiled warily. You can ask the hotel staff for help. Do you need me to call the front desk? He waved his phone and blocked the door, preventing the girl from sneaking into the room. Although this girl is pretty, it's none of my business. The girl was stunned and instinctively shook her head. When she was about to say something, Lu Qing took a step back and mercilessly closed the door after she refused to look for the hotel staff. Clang. The girl saw the wine-red door closing quickly in front of her eyes. Her body involuntarily jerked back and she was stunned on the spot. Behind the door, Lu Qing unlocked the screen and excitedly shared his encounter with his wife. A girl knocked on the door just now. Yen Zhika couldn't ignore this kind of thing. Relying on her professional ninth pin skills, she carefully took out her phone and asked, "Why?" She said she was looking for me for help and she was wearing pajamas. I asked her to look for the hotel staff directly but she refused. So I just closed the door and locked her out. Lu Qing proudly boasted. Well done. Yen Zhika praised him in her heart. Hands clasped under chin expression, she said, this feels weird. Well Qing, you handled it very cleverly. You have to do this in the future. Lu Qing was about to reply when he suddenly heard another knock on the door. He scratched his head and said, what should I do? She hasn't given up yet and is still knocking. If the surrounding people find out, it'll be bad for me. Yen Zhika rolled her eyes and thought quickly. Pushing up her sunglasses expression, she said, at this time you need your life coach, Coach Yen, to help you. The best way to deal with this kind of situation is to not do anything and directly call the front desk, explain the situation clearly, and let them send someone to deal with it. Smart. Lu Qing immediately realized and praised her generously. I'll call the front desk right away. After sending this sentence, he paused and thought about how to organize the English words to describe the situation without ambiguity. He felt that it was quite difficult. So he embarrassedly added, how should I say it in English? Yen Zhika almost burst out laughing. Ah, she said, come, let me help you translate. Just as Lu Qing was holding his phone and chatting with a smile, the woman outside continued to knock on the door. She had made up her mind that if he appeared again, she would take extreme measures. She would throw herself at him, fish in troubled waters, and take advantage of the situation. No man would call the police for such a romantic encounter that had nothing to lose. Knock, knock, knock. She knocked on the door in despair. Then she saw even more despair when 2 burly hotel security guards appeared at the intersection not far away. they shouted loudly, "Miss, which room are you in?" 10 minutes later, the woman returned to the car outside the hotel in a fluster. She complained to the leader of the Japanese delegation in the back seat, "That person is very vigilant, unlike many men who are always thinking about romantic encounters and easily fall for the bait. You will definitely report it. This method can't be used anymore. I think it's better to bribe the hotel's janitor to collect the information." No, every day before the janitor cleans, their leader will ask for the room card to check the room. The leader of the Japanese delegation pondered. "I'll think of another way." The next morning, Lu Qing, Peng Liyun, and the rest entered the Xinxiang martial arts stadium that they had booked earlier. Renli looked around but didn't look at Peng Liyun. She said seriously to Lu Qing and in Chaoyang, "I want to spar with him separately." Is this a hidden method to deal with Peng Liyun? Lu Qing pondered. Although he was curious to avoid suspicion, he turned to In Chaoyang and said, "You spar with Renli. I'll go with Peng Liyun." "Okay." And Chaoyang had calmed down and didn't decline. When the two of them went to another arena, Lu Qing saw that Peng Liyun was still in a daze. So he told the leader about the strange incident last night. "Well done." Zhong Ningtao was stunned for a few seconds. He nodded with a smile and reminded, "Tell me earlier next time." Lu Qing was about to reply when he saw Peng Liyun's eyes regain their vigor. He shook his neck, making crisp cracking sounds. August 23, 7:30 p.m. After a day of rest, the flames of the King of Youth tournament reignited. The strongest four were about to be decided. Chapter 476. The successor of Shinjai sect, Kaori Karasawa, took 11 minutes to defeat the second-seeded Vagar with half a move after the arena had turned into a mess. She was the first to advance to the semi-finals. This intense battle gave the audience a new understanding of the two inhuman mighty ones. Vagar, who had given it his all, was at least 30% stronger than when he had almost lost to Lu Qing in the double elimination round. It was breathtaking. On the other hand, the beautiful Kaori Karasawa's explosive power at the critical moment was even more terrifying. It was comparable to Peng Liyun's performance when he turned the tables on Arhat Waku. In the livestream post, Unparalleled Dragon King praised excitedly, "Brilliant! Vagar is strong but Kaori Karasawa is stronger. Get a stool and wait for the match between Lu Qing and that wretched guy." Wonton Seller was having a carefree time during the summer break of her third year of high school. "Why wretched guy?" Okamoto's fan seemed a little sensitive to this term. Wonton Seller transformed into rolling glutinous dumpling and said, "He's always hiding in the corner sneakily. That's why he's a wretched guy." 23333 Well said. Thumping the ground laughing expression, replied Brahmin. Eternal Nightfall, Yin Shaoling wandered over and said, "I'm waiting for the big shots to analyze the match." After saying this she weakly added, "You're right. The fourth-seeded guy only has one more seeded than the fifth-seeded guy. He shouldn't be that much stronger. They don't have the same fighting style, so there's no direct comparison." Road to the arena, explained to the little girl with a sense of accomplishment. Muko Yamashita is a head-on battle type, which suits Lu Cheng's taste. However, Bantam likes to fight in close quarters and move around. He either doesn't give you the chance to use your big move, or makes it so that your big move can't hit him. Also, and Chaoyang mentioned on Weibo that Bantam's darkness can secretly weaken his opponent. The exact method is unknown. In other words, the longer Lu Qing fights, the higher the chances of him losing. A plumber eating mushrooms chimed in, "So it's about a 4 to 6 chance of winning. Lu Qing 40% and Bantam 60%. Both of them have a chance of winning. Bantam's fighting style is sinister and vicious. He's good at avoiding his opponent's strong points and attacking his weak points. Even if Lu Qing wants to end the battle quickly, he probably won't be able to catch him. This is very dangerous." "That's right. With 3 minutes as the boundary. If Lu Qing can't beat Bantam in the first 3 minutes, then he won't be able to win." Pig Riding Knight agreed. Even if force concentration can effectively neutralize weakness, it can't withstand the accumulation of weakness. His girlfriend, Above the Sky, said, "I'm looking forward to the first 3 minutes of the match. It will definitely be more intense than the previous one." "What they said is what I want to say," Unparalleled Dragon King said in a comical manner. "Then I'll probably suffocate for 3 minutes. Yin Shaoling replied. Hugging head, kneeling on the ground, trembling expression, Brahmin immediately said, "I'm so nervous that I can't eat my snacks." As they chatted and discussed, time passed by slowly. The second round of the quarterfinals was about to begin. It's about to start. Luqing glanced at the electronic clock, smiled and exhaled. He said to Yenjika on QQ. She should still be on her way to school. The girl replied quickly without delay. This time she sent a picture of the oven again. Inside it were all kinds of unattractive biscuits. Good luck. It's really the oven series? Luqing shook his head and laughed. Yenjika smiled and said, of course I'm a man of my words, but I've only tried the cake and biscuits now, there's no third picture. If you want to cheer for me in another way, then fight for the next round. Sure. Luqing replied resolutely with a smile. This is a good way to cheer for me. After finishing his sentence, he locked the screen and passed his phone and wallet to Chaoyang. He reached out his hand and gave him a high five. Good luck. And Chaoyang smiled and waved his fist. Peng Liyun and Ren Li, who were standing on his left and right, did the same. After a high five, they waved their fist and said, good luck. Okay. Luqing nodded vigorously. He turned around and was about to walk to the arena. At this moment, Chaoyang realized that his phone screen was locked. He shouted in confusion, Luqing? I don't need to help you take pictures and post today? Yes. Luqing turned around and smiled. I've already thought of a reason. If I let you unreliable people do it 2 more times, I'll lose the game. What reason? Chaoyang asked in surprise. Renli was also curious and listened attentively. I'll tell you after the match. Luqing didn't say anything else. He turned around and waved his hand. He walked towards the arena step by step. He started to focus and his momentum gradually gathered. His thoughts were running fast. According to the discussions with Yenjika, Peng Liyun, Renli and Chaoyang, he already had a mature plan for the upcoming match. To deal with Banam, he had to end the battle quickly. He didn't want to be gradually weakened by the darkness. He had to watch himself fail little by little. At the same time, he couldn't be too hasty. Once he was hasty, it would be easy for assassin-type fighters to seize the opportunity and take him down in one strike. This was the overall strategy, but he couldn't be careless about the details. Although he could now infuse his every move with fire force and use high temperature to denaturalize proteins and make them lose their toxicity, the principle behind the weakening effect of Banam's darkness was unknown. Could only be based on poison. If it was similar to Ren Li's hidden scent or some special wave, then he wouldn't be able to defend himself. He could only rely on breath holding or force concentration to neutralize the effect. He had to finish off his opponent as soon as possible. As for how to end the battle quickly, Luqing also had a general idea. Banam probably didn't know that he had mastered the ice mirror, just like how he didn't know that Chaoyang had mastered the lake and mirror wisdom. He only understood it after the first battle. Martial arts like the ice mirror and the lake and mirror wisdom belong to the auxiliary category. Without experiencing it personally, it would be hard to notice it just by watching the battle videos. Moreover, both parties were from different countries. There would definitely be some gaps in the information collected. Therefore, during the battle with Chaoyang, Banam had used the darkness ability to affect his senses to launch a sneak attack. He had wasted this opportunity. According to his style, if he didn't consider the ice mirror, he would definitely try something similar in this match. It was just that he would be more cautious and roundabout than when he fought Chaoyang. And this is my chance. A chance for him to walk right into my trap. Once I get the upper hand and seize the opportunity to win, I have to be extremely aggressive and grab hold of it. With all kinds of thoughts, Luqing kept jumping up and down. When he was nearing the arena, Luqing collected his thoughts and focused his attention on what was in front of him. He knew that Banam had the means to avoid the suppression of his aura. Therefore, he held back the terror of the blizzard and waited for the right opportunity. Tap tap tap. He walked steadily to the predetermined position and saw Banam, with his hands and feet wrapped in white bandages, walking towards him silently with the gaze of a hunter sizing up his prey. This kind of gaze is really annoying. I really want to beat him up. Luqing complained to himself. He quickly calmed his mind and removed all distracting thoughts from his mind. When Banam entered the arena, the referee silently counted to 30 seconds. He raised his right hand, looked around and swung it down fiercely. Begin. Luqing stomped his feet, straightened his knees, spun his waist and shook his body. His entire body was like an explosive blizzard, blowing towards his opponent with a whistling sound. In the recent few days of sparring, he had been interacting with Peng Liyun, Renli and Chaoyang. Other than the core things, they were free to talk about them. They were able to stimulate their thoughts and generate inspiration. Everyone had learned a lot. For example, he had mixed in the superficial knowledge of the flash attack and some of the wonders of the wind sect movement technique. He had pushed his northern wind to another level. Good companions could really make a person better. It was the same in the path of martial arts. Phew. A strong gust of wind blew, cutting his face like knives. In Banham's eyes, Lu Qing was approaching him at a terrifying speed from small to large. His body seemed to be drifting as he took a step to the side. At this moment, the light in front of Lu Qing suddenly disappeared. The sounds by his ears also disappeared in an instant. At this moment, it was as though the Xinxiang Stadium had experienced a blackout. Furthermore, all the spectators had silently died on the spot. It made one's hair stand on end. It was exceptionally terrifying. Lu Qing had already expected this. He stopped in his tracks abruptly and went from a high-speed state to a standstill. He adjusted his muscles and directed all the momentum towards the arena floor. Under normal circumstances, he should have heard the sharp sounds of friction and shattering. However, the surroundings were silent. All the noise seemed to have been swallowed by the strange darkness. The lake in Lu Cheng's heart had already condensed into a crystal-clear mirror that reflected his surroundings. He wasn't affected by the loss of his senses. A ripple appeared and he immediately locked onto the direction of Banham's attack. However, the subtle premonition that came from his body and mind told him that this was a feint and not the real killer move. Lu Cheng believed in this premonition and didn't make any moves. As expected, that ripple quickly calmed down. A turbulent wave followed closely behind and almost disrupted the ice mirror. Good move. I've been waiting for you. A thought flashed through Lu Cheng's mind. Immediately, a boundless darkness appeared in his mind. It had the coldest coldness and the quietest atmosphere. However, it made one feel transparent and dreamy. In this kind of darkness, dust accumulated and heavily collapsed. Streams of flames shot out, forming a scorching and terrifying Yendi divine statue. It illuminated the heavens, transmitted warmth, and erupted with an enormous rumbling sound. This brought about a dazzling light and an even more intense collapse. A mutated version of severe warning. Lu Qing was waiting for Banham to attack him in the dark and give him a severe warning. The first attack of the match. Bam. He turned his body halfway. The muscles on his right arm bulged and vibrated at high speed. He swept backwards and hit a slightly cold fist made of flesh. Poof. As though the darkness was absorbed, the lights in the stadium lit up again. Astonishment flashed across Banham's cold eyes. He felt as though there was a terrifying mini-vortex or heavy ball hidden in his opponent's fist. It devoured all of his strength and sucked in his arm tightly. Boom. The whirlpool exploded and the violent shockwave spread out rapidly. It was like a huge iron hammer that smashed into Banham, causing blood to flow out from the corner of his mouth. He lost his balance and was sent flying backward. This was the result of a move that leaned towards sneak attacks and a simplified physical invulnerability move in a head-on collision. Lu Cheng's eyes lit up. His chi and blood suddenly retracted. He stomped on the ground and pounced forward with a cracking sound. He was as fast as a high-speed train and landed in front of Banham, who had just landed on the ground. The strong wind he stirred up could even blow a child away. Before Banham could stand firmly, he was already swaying in the wind and rain. A dim light flashed in his eyes and condensed into a sharp spike. He was about to shoot towards Lu Cheng and attack his mind secretly. Lu Cheng had absolute reaction and immediately noticed it. However, he didn't draw the forwarding formula to suppress his mind and defend against the secret art. Instead, he raised his hand to form a seal and visualized the army blade. Attack against attack and not give in. This was the aggressiveness he wanted to show. He wanted to seize the opportunity and grab the fruit of victory in his hands. Army. As the deep ancient voice reverberated, Lu Cheng was hit by the serene sting. The light in his eyes dimmed as though he had fallen into a nightmare. The ice mirror in his heart shattered inch by inch and neutralized most of the impact. On the other hand, Banham's body was trembling. Fear was written all over his face. He was trembling in fear and had forgotten the situation he was in. With the neutralization of the ice mirror, Lu Cheng was the first to recover. He took a deep breath and gathered the fear and panic brought by the serene sting together with his chi and blood, spirit, and force to his lower abdomen. Boom. His Dan force gushed out like an awakening volcano. Lu Cheng grew taller as though he was filled with blood. His muscles propped up his clothes and showed a twisted state. He was full of masculinity. Many in the audience were swayed as they experienced the beauty of strength. The usually gentle and easygoing young man was extremely manly at this moment. Bam. Lu Cheng's muscles tightened and he visualized a thick thundercloud in his mind. He shook his right arm and swung it towards his opponent with the Thunder Roar Zen. Bantam had just suffered internal injuries from the mutated version of Severe Warning. Thunder Roar Zen was the best way to aggravate and trigger the impact. The second strike of fire-like invasion. Seeing the fist smashing towards him like a mountain, Bantam stimulated his chi and blood and ignited his strength. He quickly raised his arm to block. Bam! Amidst the loud noise, he jumped a little from the hit. His organs were shaken and the smell of rust filled his throat. Lu Cheng's eyes were firm. He swung his arm and once again tightened his chi and force, completing the explosion of Dan's stage. He didn't give Bantam any hope of dodging or counterattacking. He continued to tighten his muscles and punch forward. The third strike of Thunder Roar Zen. Bam! Bantam was good at close-range fighting. He couldn't use his chain attacks at all. He could only grit his teeth and awaken the potential in his body. His fist glowed with a faint black light and burst out from his ribs to welcome the enemy's attack. Bam! As the two fists collided, he trembled. His chi and blood were in turmoil and his head was almost dizzy. Following the momentum of the enemy, he slid backwards. Just as Lu Cheng was about to close in and give chase, darkness filled his eyes again. The surroundings became quiet again and he lost track of Bantam in an instant. At this moment, this inhuman mighty one from southern Zheng was looking for an opportunity to break away from contact and regroup. If I don't attack, I won't be able to sense him, right? Lu Cheng's expression didn't change. His muscles, fascia, and organs changed accordingly. The image of the heavy and hot Emperor Yen statue appeared in his mind and allowed the flame force to take shape. Following which, he shook his wrist and shot a ball of red and white compressed fireball in front of the ice mirror mark. Boom! The loud noise broke the silence and disturbed the darkness, causing it to lose its support and fade away quickly. In an instant, Lu Cheng saw rolling waves of fire and smoke. He also saw Bantam, whose movements were affected by the explosion of Emperor Yen force. Kacha. He took a step forward and formed a seal with both hands. In the lake in his heart, he wrote the ancient words of, "Never admit defeat." Fighting. Lu Cheng roared and attacked step by step. Every move of his unique skill was unforgiving. The fourth strike with all his might. Bam! His muscles were knotted and it was as though he had transformed into a mountain-splitting giant. He swung his huge axe downwards. With a bang, Bantam, who had hurriedly raised his arms to block, was smashed into the ground. He was an inch shorter and dark red blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Again. Lu Cheng took advantage of his weakness and took his life. He took half a step forward, raised both hands and formed a seal with both hands. Fighting. He exhaled solemnly. His arms swelled instantly and his muscles were unusually distinct. He then shook his arm violently and executed a crushing punch with Zen tremor. The fifth strike was unstoppable. Bantam's eyes flickered. He hugged his arms and made a twisting gesture to welcome the enemy's fist. Boom. There seemed to be an explosion at the spot. Bantam almost spat out blood. He took advantage of the recoil, curled his body into a ball and flew backwards. Bam. Lu Cheng used the attainment formula. With a stomp of his feet, he chased after him amidst the sound of flying rocks. He closed the distance in an instant. The coldness in Bantam's eyes intensified. While he was flying, he was prepared. Before he landed on the ground, he had already extended his right hand. It was covered with a layer of faint black light, forming a strange yet distinct contrast with the white bandage. The faint black light converged towards his open 5 fingers quickly and condensed into a deep black color. It turned into pieces of sharp thorns, and was about to grab Lu Cheng's fist. This was Bantam's trump card. Once he grabbed it, he would immediately lose his strength temporarily. At that time, he could take advantage of the situation to tear and cripple the enemy's arm. Of course, this would also cause him to suffer a backlash. Unless it was a last resort or if he had the chance to win in one strike, he was more than willing to use darkness to gradually weaken his opponent. At this moment, it was the former situation. At the critical moment, he had to seek victory in defeat. Seeing those black fingers that made one's scalp go numb, Lu Cheng suddenly stopped. He accumulated his inertia and created a sharp friction sound. However, he didn't stop to avoid it. Instead, he stopped to buy time for visualization. A scorching hot, heavy, and terrifying statue of Emperor Yen appeared in his mind. It was like a huge sun compressing the flame force in his body into a ball. Following which, fire god Zhurong stepped out of the void with a crimson dragon under his feet. He suppressed the loss of control that was about to explode. Lu Cheng took a small leap and faced Bantam's palm that was flickering with dim light. He swung his arm backwards and with the momentum he threw out a punch with a bang. Internal explosion punch. Not retreating for the sixth strike. At this moment, if he didn't dare to fight head-on, he would give Bantam a chance to catch his breath and turn the tide of the battle. As for Lu Cheng, he was a martial artist who had experienced life-and-death battles. He was determined and dared to risk his life. His fist broke through the air barrier and created a layer of flames from friction. It dragged out a white wave and hit the palm that was flickering with faint black light. Their skin was touching and their strength was balanced. At the same time as the flame force gushed in, Bantam's palms made a closing motion. His 5 fingers protruded with tiny muscles and veins as he firmly grabbed Lu Cheng's fist. A strange glow flashed by. Boom. It was as though a bomb exploded in Bantam's body. The injuries and concussions from before were completely triggered. His chi and blood were boiling, his organs were shaking, his mind was buzzing, his throat was thick with rust and his vision was blurred. He almost bent over and fell to the ground. He didn't have the strength to grab and tear his enemy apart. As for Lu Cheng, the flames that covered his fist burned away part of the black light. Only his body felt weak and his mind wasn't affected much. He held on, using his willpower to control his mind and his mind to control his body. He withdrew his chi and blood, gathered his force and suppressed his weakness. Boom. With the explosion of Dan force he recovered part of his strength. His muscles were distinct and sweaty. Bam. He visualized the thundercloud again and struck out his right arm in the opposite direction. 7th strike of thunder roar zen. Bam. Bantam, who was barely resisting, jumped and spat out blood from his throat. He fell to the ground softly. Lu Cheng lifted him with his toes and held on to his throat. The referee looked at both parties deeply. He raised his right hand and announced, "Lu Cheng wins." Lu Cheng won after 10 moves. Lu Cheng retracted his right leg weakly. Seeing that Bantam was barely standing, he saluted and returned to the spectator stand without stopping. After he took a few steps, the audience finally reacted. They exclaimed loudly and cheered Lu Cheng's name again. He actually defeated the 4th seed in such a short time. Lu Cheng's footsteps weren't slow. He returned to his original position in no time. He bumped fists with Peng Liyun and the rest who were stunned and didn't know what to say. He took back his phone. He first sent a smiley face to Yenjika and said, "I won." Then he switched to the live post interface. He saw that little Wonton and the rest had tagged him many times and requested to take photos. His fingers moved quickly as he typed. Lu Cheng replied with a smile, "I didn't even have time to take a picture before the competition ended." This was the reason he prepared. Chapter 477. Seeing Lu Cheng's reply, Wonton Seller immediately nodded her head vigorously and said, "Yeah, I haven't even recovered from the shock yet." "He won just like that? At most 10 moves? It was a little too fast." Unparalleled Dragon King said, "But it was F*King exciting. Violence, ferocity, and the most primitive feeling of power. My adrenaline was pumping and I couldn't wait to rush out and fight with my dog." Okamoto's fan chimed in, sinister smile. "That made me a little stiff." Art. F*CK, you F*King gay man. A plumber eating mushrooms scolded his friend. Okamoto's fan replied, spreading hands and raising eyebrows expression, "Don't you think that Lu Cheng's fighting style makes your blood boil? I want to beat my chest and roar like King Kong. I want to find a girl and have a good fight on the bed. It's normal to be hard." "Pervert. You pervert uncle." Brahman scolded and said. "But, to be honest, when my idol attacked with all his strength, I really wanted to touch his muscles. Cover my face." "Ha, Brahman who is starry-eyed." Wonton Seller said, "Thinking back, I also thought that Dragon King was very manly. That's why I became a martial arts fan." "Thinking back? Don't use this word for a minor who hasn't reached 18 yet." Road to the Arena said jokingly, "Thinking back, I thought that martial artists were especially good at acting cool. That's why I was apprenticed." "Alright, speaking of minors, where is our primary school student?" Eternal Nightfall, Unparalleled Dragon King just realized that Lu Cheng's loyal fan was missing from the post-match celebration and discussion. After the Yen Shaoling quickly appeared. "I'm watching the replay. It's the 3rd time. Wipe your mouth. I'm actually speechless. You won." Unparalleled Dragon King said, "Who would have thought that Lu Cheng would win so quickly and so cleanly before the match? I feel that his transformation is almost complete. He's almost at the real and human level. Pig riding night guest, Bantam isn't the type to fight head-on. If he made a mistake and was caught by someone of the same level, it's inevitable that he would be killed by a combo. That may be the case, but defeating an inhuman mighty one within 10 moves is still very shocking. It's a pity that I don't understand Xinjiang language and Nanjing language, so I can't go to the news and forums to see how they flatter, how disappointed they are, and how they prostrate themselves. Plumber eating mushrooms sighed. Unparalleled Dragon King chuckled. Give me 2 minutes. I'll check the Japanese forums and see what they say. After a while he copied and pasted the original text and translated, "How should I call him? A genius once in 3,000 years? To think that I even cheered for Barnum for 10 seconds. Why 10 seconds? Because he lost. Even Kaori-chan can't beat Barnum so quickly, lost status attacks. 10 moves, tease. Smoked sauce is the best. I feel that this generation of Chinese is very strong. Those idiots from the Martial Artist Association should open their eyes and take a look. Stop being so arrogant. They need to reform the entire training system. Ridiculous battle. Terrifying samurai. At this point Brahmin said, Continue. Little dragon, continue. I'm over the moon watching this." After replying, Lu Qing only took a few glances and didn't watch seriously. This was because his phone's special notification had rung. Yenjika sent an emoji with a red face. "I thought you wouldn't be able to get your phone back so quickly. So I watched the replay again. Isn't this the same as Yen Shaoling?" Lu Qing almost burst out laughing. He sent a proud emoji and said, "Come on. Praise me as much as you want. I can take it." To be honest, he was a little smug when he replied to the people in the forum with the excuse of, "The battle ended too quickly and I didn't have time to take photos." Yenjika rolled her eyes and asked with concern, "I heard that Banam's last move was very powerful. Qing, are you okay?" It was indeed very powerful. Lu Qing pretended to be pitiful. "Although I have regained some of my strength, my body is still weak. All my attributes are deteriorating. If I hadn't finished Banam off then, I would have been in a dangerous situation." Of course, Banam had endured the mutated version of Severe Warning and switched to the internal explosion punch with Emperor Yen Force as the core. Furthermore, he had been hit with the fighting formula twice, followed by a few Thunder Roar strikes. Coupled with the backlash from his ultimate move, even if he managed to pull through, his condition would at most be the same as Lu Cheng's. More importantly, their martial arts path only focused on unearthing the potential of the human body to unleash explosive power. It wasn't like China's force concentration, which allowed one to control one's body and neutralize the effects. If they continued to hurt each other like this, Lu Qing would definitely last longer. However, this was because Banam hadn't been able to break free from his attacks. If he had opened up a distance and entered the scene he was best at, Lu Qing would have been weakened by the darkness. He wouldn't have been able to continue shaking his opponent and the tide of the battle would have turned quickly. "Yeah, it's good that you're fine." Nodding like a chick pecking at grains expression, Yenjika shouted, "Qing." "Yes." Lu Qing replied immediately. "You were so cool just now." Yenjika pursed her lips and danced with her fingers. She added silently in her heart, "and especially manly too." After sending the message, she lifted her head and looked out of the car window. She saw the American-style buildings on both sides of the road and a topless teenager hitting a sandbag in the garden. Those martial arts fans in school would definitely praise Qing again because he was amazed. Yenjika's eyes looked into the distance and her dimples showed. As she thought about it, she suddenly felt an uncontrollable sense of loss. Lu Qing's lips curled when he saw the girl's praise. The joy of defeating Banam exploded. He couldn't wait to stand up and pace a few rounds. At this moment, his heart skipped a beat. He turned his head and looked to the side. He saw Kaori Karasawa, who had changed into a kimono and was sizing him up. Her hair was tied up, her round face was sweet, her eyes were beautiful, and her smile was demure. She didn't look like the genius girl who had just defeated Vagar. Instead, she looked like an ordinary student attending a festival. Their eyes met. Kaori Karasawa nodded slightly. Her eyes were as deep as an ancient lake, which didn't match her age and temperament. The martial arts of the Xinjai sect were both mysterious and violent. They wouldn't be easy to deal with, Lu Qing thought. If they were to encounter each other, even if he completed his transformation, his chances of winning wouldn't be high. Shifting his gaze elsewhere, Lu Qing happened to see Banam's staggering figure leaving the changing room. He walked out of the martial arts arena silently, just like how he came in silently. As for Vagar, he never appeared again after losing to Kaori Karasawa. As for Waku, he didn't come to the arena to watch the match. He started his daily training again. Muko Yamashita stared at the young man who was half a head shorter than him. He had mixed feelings. This goal isn't bad, right? Kaori Karasawa's voice suddenly rang in his ears. Muko Yamashita turned his head and frowned, expressing his doubts. With such a goal, Muko-kun would definitely be full of motivation and wouldn't slack off. Otherwise, he would never be able to wash away his shame, Kaori Karasawa chuckled. Muko Yamashita's mind buzzed and his emotions exploded. He felt like he was being mocked. However, he calmed down quickly. He knew that Kaori Karasawa was speaking the truth. She was even trying to provoke him so that he wouldn't become numb to failure and get used to the shame. Thank you. I will prove it to you. Muko Yamashita replied in a deep voice. As he spoke, he suddenly felt a little lost. Could he really surpass Lu Qing again? Could he really wash away this shame? On the other side, Lu Qing had already retracted his gaze. He couldn't hide his smile as he played with his phone. And Chaoyang glanced at him. Seeing that he wasn't going to respond, he thought of the question he had before the match. He took out his phone and entered the live stream thread to look for a reply. This is the reason you came up with? He was stunned for a few seconds before blurting out. Why was he so confident? Lu Qing lifted his head and explained with a smile. Yeah. I was already prepared. This match was either a quick win or a quick loss. Anyway, any reason could be used. Luckily, Bantam was at a disadvantage at the start of the match. Alright. His thinking was really thorough. And Chaoyang's mouth twitched and said thoughtfully, if that's the case, if Bantam wanted to weaken his opponent with his darkness, he would need to have close contact. Otherwise, he wouldn't have needed to sneak an attack on you. He would have had a 70% to 80% chance of winning by going around and stalling for time. If that was the case, Bantam wouldn't have been hit by Lu Cheng's killer move at the start of the match. Yeah. I've seen part of his previous videos. That's what I thought too. Lu Qing nodded in agreement. Then he thought of something. He glanced at Ren Li and Peng Liyun who were 10 meters away from each other. He lowered his voice and said, after Ren Li advanced to the inhuman stage, would there be changes to her dark fragrance? In the past, it required the plague sect force to hit the opponent as a prerequisite. Moreover, the area of effect was very small. Without these two restrictions, dark fragrance would be a bit of a bug. With Ren Li's outstanding wind sect footwork, once dark fragrance was released, she would be able to move around in circles and wait for victory. And Chaoyang turned around and looked at Ren Li. He whispered, it's not that exaggerated. But it's probably much stronger than when you encountered it. While the two of them were talking, the arena was tidied up. A battle that was enough to be engraved in the hearts of the audience was gone. After a song and dance performance, the referee stepped into the arena. The third match was imminent. Peng Liyun and Ren Li stood up at the same time and walked towards the arena from two different aisles. They had even forgotten to high-five their teammates. Looking at their backs, Lu Qing held his phone and couldn't help but laugh. Why doesn't Ren Li get lost when she goes to the arena? This is probably true love. And Chaoyang smiled and replied. The battle between Peng and Ren that couldn't happen due to Lu Qing in April was about to begin. Chapter 478. One in white and one in red stood on the left and right of the referee, about 12 to 13 meters apart. This was the first official battle between Peng Liyun and Ren Li, who had been known together for a long time, after more than a year. The last time they fought, one of them was a weak 6th pin while the other was a top 7th pin. Now, both of them had reached the inhuman stage and were worthy of the title of Heavenly Son of the Era. Unfortunately, the audience didn't understand the hidden history and meaning behind this battle, so they couldn't create the best atmosphere. Ren Li regulated her breathing and slightly trembled her muscles, secretly warming up her body. Her eyes reflected the young man opposite her who was no longer idle and was focused on his battle. The referee looked around, raised his right hand and shouted, "Begin!" As soon as he finished speaking, he saw Ren Li take a step to the left and twist her body in the opposite direction. Her muscles, fascia and strength bulged and with a bang, a tornado visible to the naked eye appeared. It roared and swept toward Peng Liyun. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The wind whimpered as if a demon was coming, especially disturbing the listener's mood. Just as Peng Liyun's mind outlined the sacred and majestic thunder god statue to suppress his mind, he felt the heavy wind pressure on his face. Ren Li was approaching. As an old enemy who knew her well, he didn't try to respond. He directly put his palms together and was about to release the thunder from a clear sky. At this moment, Ren Li seemed to have sensed something. Her wind force suddenly swelled, twisting her muscles and fascias, and suddenly swinging her center of gravity, making an incredible turn in the high-speed dash. Bang! There was an explosion at the original spot, as if an airplane was flying at low altitude, or a high-speed train was running at full speed from dozens of centimeters away. The strong wind made the referee subconsciously raise his hand to block in front of his face, and his body swayed back. Ren Li's wind steps had reached an incredible level and reached the real inhuman level. In a turn, the strong wind could push people away. Peng Liyun's thunder from a clear sky was drowned out by the loud noise. The thin thunder blade that he pulled out chopped at Ren Li's original path, hitting the ground and creating a scorch mark. Having fought against each other so many times, they were no longer probing each other. Right from the start, they were all shaken to the core. After completing the turn, Ren Li suddenly lowered her shoulders and flicked her wrist in the opposite direction, causing the force to surge into a high-speed spinning wind blade that shot towards Peng Liyun's throat. At the same time, she twisted her back and swung her waist, kicking 7 times in a row. Every kick was either aimed at Peng Liyun's ankle joint or his knee. She had completed the 27th move of the wind sect. Striking from the top and kicking from the bottom, cold blade, and tornado. Peng Liyun seemed to have expected this. He suddenly raised his right arm in front of him, and his fist, which was wrapped in electric light, went from bottom to top and hit the bottom of the wind blade. With a sharp friction sound and a sudden high-pitched sizzling sound, the wind blade disintegrated and turned into a gust of wind. Inside his body, there seemed to be a turbocharger that was spinning crazily. When he raised his arm to block the knife, he seemed to be repelled by the wind pressure generated by Ren Li's tornado chain kick. He was pushed hard and swung back just in time. He didn't straighten his back and didn't exert any strength. Bam bam bam. Ren Li's kick missed. Peng Liyun took a step forward, withdrew his chi and blood, and exploded his Dan force. He stretched his fascia, flexed his joints, and launched a machine punch. Bam 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 bam. The sounds of the punches were endless, and the electric light came one after another. Ren Li didn't back down. She used tornado again and kicked with explosive force. Her whole body seemed to be half floating, stirring up a scary strong wind. Seeing the electric snakes flying around, the strong wind blowing, and the sound of the punches hitting their hearts like drums, Lu Cheng and Chaiyang couldn't help but be amazed by the level of Peng Liyun and Ren Li when they gave it their all. The big devil, who was serious from the beginning, was really scary. His attacks were smooth and his defense was natural. Ren Li, who was usually unreliable, didn't seem to be at a disadvantage at all. Her leg skills were amazing and her sword skills were in her palms. They were evenly matched. This level of intense battle was enlightening for the two of them. They watched without blinking, afraid that they would miss out on the key points. Because of this, Lu Cheng only took pictures occasionally and posted them in the live thread. Everyone understood his condition because everyone was like this. The heated discussion just now had become cold and quiet. Phew, when my transformation is complete and I stabilize, will I be at Ren Li's level now? Lu Cheng thought as he watched. It had been almost 5 days since his transformation. He had already overcome the difficulties in the early stage, and his progress was more than half complete. There were only 7 or 8 days left for him to slowly finish up. In terms of physical fitness, he could be considered a standard inhuman mighty one, but he still lacked the taste of precise control. Maybe not as pure as Ren Li, but his actual combat level should be about there. Lu Cheng nodded slightly, comparing and judging himself. Bam 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 bam. Dust floated above the arena. The wind was strong and lightning flashed continuously, illuminating the eyes of the spectators. Ren Li and Peng Liyun fought and retreated, sometimes competing with their body movements and sometimes making turns. They fought from the center to the left, and then from the left to the other side. There was not a single intact brick left on the ground. In these 5 or 6 minutes, they didn't use their simplified physical invulnerability moves, because if they didn't have a good opportunity and missed, they would easily fall into a passive state and be suppressed by their opponent. After a tough battle, Ren Li finally relied on the advantage of her body movements to sneak to Peng Liyun's side, seizing an excellent opportunity. In her mind, she naturally outlined a green hurricane that connected the 9 heavens and the earth. Seawater, trees, and boulders were sucked into it and rushed to the sky. This led to changes in her corresponding muscles, fascias, and organs, causing the layers of Wind Empress force to twist and turn into a spiral. Following which, various kinds of wind blew, replacing the hurricane and condensing into the image of a female god, suppressing the force that was about to go out of control. Bam! Rinli bent her body forward and blocked with her left arm. She turned her waist and stretched her back so that her right fist came out from below and turned into a sky cannon. Peng Liyun took a deep breath and gathered his strength. His arms swelled and he bent his elbow to strike. Electricity leaped out of his body. Bam! The sound was urgent. Rinli's right arm reverberated. Her fist was sore and her muscles were numb. She couldn't help but take a step back. Peng Liyun felt that every part of his body was being torn apart. A strong wind rose from under his feet, spiraling and sweeping, making him fly up uncontrollably. The 10th move of the wind sect, 9 Heaven's Breath. Simplified physical invulnerability. Peng Liyun had just been sent flying when Rinli stepped on the ground and made another loud sound. She took advantage of the place where her opponent was about to fall and was ready to wait for him to come out. Facing this, Peng Liyun's thoughts turned quickly. He quickly visualized and finally fixed his eyes on the green jade amulet floating in the void. BZZT BZZT BZZT. Lightning flashed on the jade amulet and turned into seal characters. The force of heaven punishment in Peng Liyun's body gathered in his right palm. Bam! He pressed down hurriedly and a silver lightning as thick as a thumb suddenly appeared in his palm and struck towards Rinli. This was another application of the thunder seal. Peng Liyun couldn't use it unless he reached the inhuman level and his body had mutated. Rinli's scalp was numb. When her opponent pressed down hurriedly, she suddenly straightened her back and took a step back forcefully, triggering the strong wind. Bam! The lightning struck and brushed past Rinli's body and hit the ground, spreading out small sparks in all directions. Taking advantage of the arrival of the divine punishment, Peng Liyun had already landed halfway. When Rinli regained her composure and came again, his feet had landed on solid ground. He didn't use the divine punishment consecutively like how he dealt with Waku because his opponent was different. Rinli could throw wind blades and had many tricks up her sleeve, unlike Waku who only knew how to fight head-on after turning into an Azura. Therefore he felt that it was best not to take the risk unless it was absolutely necessary. Rinli knew that her chance was only for a moment. She didn't hold back anymore. The scene in her mind was already fixed on the plague sect deity with 3 heads and 6 arms and vertical eyes. Bam! She threw out a punch. Her joints suddenly stretched and her arms strangely grew a little longer. It was this little bit that made Peng Liyun's dodging look like a mirage. He could only use the force of absorption and explosion to block the attack with his fist. Bam! Rinli was knocked back. Peng Liyun's body was suddenly empty. His chest was stuffy and he was short of breath. He almost lost his mind. Knowing that Rinli would follow up with the hidden scent, he suddenly used force concentration to dispel it. Then he held his breath and launched a crazy attack. Bam bam bam. Bam bam bam. Punches, kicks, elbows and knees. Every attack of Peng Liyun's was accompanied by a thick silvery white electric light. In the eyes of Lu Cheng and the rest, it was like lightning strikes again and again. The continuous divine punishment had changed to an explosion on flat ground. However, it was still terrifying. For an inhuman mighty one, not breathing for a few minutes wasn't a problem. However, that was under the condition that they didn't do any strenuous exercise. Now, Peng Liyun had been holding his breath for a full 2 minutes and still showed no signs of stopping. Lu Cheng's eyelids twitched as he felt the difference between him and his opponent. Rinli activated the hidden scent and gritted her teeth to hold on. Her wind force was continuously shattered and her body was continuously electrocuted. However, she couldn't find a chance to open up a distance. As time passed, the accumulated numbness in her body finally reached its limit. She couldn't even use force concentration. Her arm was knocked away by Peng Liyun's elbow. Taking advantage of the situation, he flicked his joints and threw a punch towards her throat. Rinli's body was numb and her movements were sluggish. She couldn't block in time and could only watch as the punch stopped before her vital organs. Without hesitation, the referee raised his hand and announced, "Peng Liyun wins." Rinli heaved a sigh of relief. After a while, she did a force concentration to suppress part of the numbness. She then cupped her hands and turned around, walking towards the stone steps with the bouncing of her muscles. After 2 steps, she suddenly paused. Peng Liyun was still standing there, motionless as though he was waiting to be cheered. Puzzled, Rinli turned around and looked at that guy. She asked softly, "Why aren't you moving?" Peng Liyun smiled bitterly and said, "I'll fall if I move. I couldn't hold my breath for the last dozen moves." Now that the hidden scent has completely taken effect, Rinli was stunned for a moment. The corners of her mouth suddenly curled up, and a hint of pride appeared in her eyes. She waved to the staff next to her, raised her chin and said, You guys help him. With that, she walked down the arena with her head held high. Her mood improved inexplicably as she accepted the compliments from Lu Cheng and Chaoyang. In the fourth match, Gusai won easily and clinched the final spot in the top 4. The lot drawing ceremony was held shortly after. The guest drew the first name. Gusai. Lu Cheng lifted his gaze from his phone and saw the guest take out the second round ball. Let's hope the host pulls another dirty trick. I'm the weakest after Gusai. Pick me. He'll only have a chance of entering the finals if he picks me. The guest took a look at the round ball and showed it to the crowd. Peng Liyun. Lu Cheng was stunned for a moment. When he came to his senses, his opponent was confirmed. Kaori Karasawa, the top seed Kaori Karasawa. Chapter 479. Kaori Karasawa. Lu Cheng muttered the name and turned to look at the Japanese representative team. The girl in kimono was also looking at him. Her expression was calm and her gaze was gentle, without a hint of hostility. However, Lu Cheng knew very well that this would be the strongest opponent he had faced in this competition. The title of top seed wasn't just for show. Shinjai sect was a martial arts sect with a long history in Japan. It was the product of the combination of local swordsmanship and the Zen techniques of Buddhists from the East. During daily training, it cultivated one's mind and nature through flower arrangement, tea ceremony, and painting to find one's self. During actual combat, it was known for its speed and ferocity, and for its mystical and explosive power. It had the mind's eye, and was good at blind fights and random attacks. Among them, the flying dragon takedown was known for its extreme speed. Once it was successfully executed, no one in the same realm could dodge it. It was similar to Peng Liyun's low-level version of Cloudless Thunderblade, but there was a fundamental difference in the way it was executed. Peng Liyun only needed to strike with his palms, and his opponent would know to suppress his mind and dodge it. However, the flying dragon takedown had little warning signs. By the time it was detected, it would be absolute reaction. Of course, no matter how fast it was, it couldn't be faster than the speed of lightning. If both parties maintained a good distance, there was still hope to dodge or block it. Generally speaking, Shinjai sect was a Japanese swordsmanship sect heavily influenced by Buddhism. Before Kaori Karasawa reached the inhuman stage, she had used her swordsmanship to combine with her fists and legs, stunning the entire Japan. She was known as a once-in-3,000 years talent. Originally, when both parties reached the inhuman stage, weapons were allowed in the arena. However, in the King of Kings tournament, as most of the Inhumans had just reached the inhuman stage, their control was doubted. Hence, such practices were banned to prevent bloodstains and corpses from appearing. This prevented Kaori Karasawa from facing her opponent in her strongest form, and could only use 90% of her strength. Even so, in the quarterfinals she managed to barely defeat the unarmed second seed Vagar with half a move. It was as though the halo of the champion was already on her. Phew. Lu Cheng exhaled. He didn't feel dejected but rather satisfied. To him, he had already achieved his initial goal by entering the top 4 and obtaining a considerable amount of prize money. Under such circumstances, he would definitely be more than willing to experience different styles of martial arts to broaden his horizons and accumulate experience. Like Peng Liyun, there would be no lack of opportunities to spar with him in the future, so there was no need to rush it. As for Kaori Karasawa, it might not be possible for him to spar with her for another 2 or 3 years. Once he missed this opportunity, who knows when he would be able to witness the martial arts of the Shinjai sect. Since he didn't pick Gusai, he would rather have Kaori Karasawa. His muscles trembled slightly and his blood flowed faster. Lu Cheng's fighting spirit was boiling in his heart. He began to look forward to the semifinals the day after tomorrow. No matter how strong my opponent is, it's not like I don't have any hope of winning. Who in the world would willingly admit defeat right after the match had been decided? At the Japanese delegation, Kaori Karasawa's lips curled into a sweet smile. She seemed very satisfied with Lu Cheng. She turned her head sideways to size up the enemy, but from the corner of her eye, she saw the researcher with messy hair, Makoto Otaki, walk to her side and bow excitedly. Kaori-chan, I'm counting on you. Kaori Karasawa answered non-committally. Her mind was already filled with images of the previous matches. Not bad, there's no infighting, said the leader Zhong Ningtao happily when he saw the results of the draw. Moreover, with Peng Liyun going up against Gusai, a spot in the finals had been secured. The wild card team had successfully completed their mission. Peng Liyun could even win against Waku, who was at least half a level stronger than Gusai. With the experience of dealing with the heart reflection punch, his chances of winning would only be higher. That's good, that's good. Lu Qing smiled perfunctorily. His fingers quickly tapped on the screen and sent the results to Kujika. Kaori Karasawa. Yenjika replied quickly. Sitting in a dazed expression, I feel like the host has given up on himself. Haha, I think so too. After all, it's unlikely that Gusai would win against anyone. Moreover, Xinjiang's results are already better than Nanjing and Miluo's. Now that they've secured a spot in the semifinals, it doesn't matter who they pick. That's right, that's right. There's no need to play dirty anymore. Yenjika suddenly said, Qing, are you destined to clash with the Japanese? Why do you keep picking them? First it was Ichii Sakata, then it was Muko Yamashita, and now it's Kaori Karasawa. Are you trying to single-handedly defeat their entire delegation? Ichii Sakata, Muko Yamashita, and Kaori Karasawa were the three strongest members of the Japanese delegation. Defeating them was no different from defeating the entire team. Now that you mention it, I feel like I had a grudge against them in my previous life. Why do I keep picking them? Kaori Karasawa is very strong. It's been almost a year since she achieved Chi and got a 6th Dan black belt. If she unleashes her full strength and wields a blade, I feel like she's even stronger than Peng Liyun. I'll be lucky if I don't get beaten by her. My chances of winning against her are slim. I'm not being humble, I'm just speaking the truth. I won't brag in front of my little fairy if I don't have much confidence in winning. I believe in you, Brother Cheng. Yenjika suddenly sent an emoji of a monkey wagging its tail and giving out red hearts to encourage him. You'll definitely do well. Yeah, I can't say you have a chance of winning. That'll ruin your character. But it's weird that Cheng keeps picking Japanese mighty ones. Yeah, the King of Youth Pro League has been weird since the beginning. We were given 4 wild cards and there was a mysterious woman knocking on our door at night. Yenjika looked up and pursed her pink lips. She had some doubts in her heart, but she couldn't string these strange things together. Soon, she stopped thinking and began to listen to the teacher attentively. In the live thread, Eternal Nightfall, Yen Shaoling sent an emoji of a sighing with open arms as soon as the results of the draw were out. What's the big deal? What happened to the cheating host? If he cheated, wouldn't it be Lu Cheng against Gusai and enter the finals? Unparalleled Dragon King replied, I overestimated their self-esteem. They're actually satisfied with the semi-finals. That's normal. If it was Waku, there wouldn't be much doubt if he made it to the finals. But if they relied on drawing lots to send Gusai to the finals, that's too shameless. Who's going to bring them along in the future? Road to the Arena was mentally prepared for this. Then I've overestimated their shamelessness. A plumber eating mushrooms replied, spitting. Let's not talk about this anymore. The important thing now is, does my idol have a high chance of beating Kaori Karasawa? Asked Brahman. At most, a 20% chance of winning, Pig Riding Knight answered honestly. Unparalleled Dragon King chimed in, Lu Qing can barely beat Vagar when he's at full strength, let alone Kaori Karasawa. Although it's a little exaggerated to say that she's a once-in-3,000 years beauty, she's still capable. Let's see if she's careless or if she's injured from the fight with Vagar. As for Lu Qing, he's always been able to outperform himself, so we don't have to worry about him. Invincible Punch had almost taken Lu Qing as his role model. Then I'll enjoy the competition and snacks, sob sob sob. Brahman replied, wiping tears with a handkerchief. I'm not listening, I'm not listening, I'm not listening. Eternal Nightfall replied Yen Shaoling. After drawing lots, Lu Qing and the rest returned to the hotel. Among them Renli was exhausted. Peng Liyun was still under the influence of hidden scent. He didn't say much and went straight to his room. And Chaoyang sat on the sofa in the lobby for a while. He listened to music and watched strangers come and go, enjoying the solitude in the crowd. Lu Qing washed up first, then curled up on the bed. He chatted with Yenjika while browsing through Kaori Karasawa's battle videos given by Unparalleled Dragon King. His routine was no different from the previous few days. He didn't feel bored at all. Instead, he enjoyed it. Outside the hotel there were 2 exits. Each of them was guarded by a group of sneaky people. However, they didn't see any member of the wild card team go out alone. They're too obedient. Why don't they go out and have some fun? The leader gritted his teeth and whispered, Xinjiang's red light district is famous all over the world. Not only can they taste ordinary flavors, but they can also make all kinds of strange things. The person beside him was also puzzled. In the past, there would always be people sneaking out from the Chinese delegation. Maybe these 4 guys are a little weird. The leader sighed. That girl doesn't go out to shop either. Isn't she wasting her time coming here? The person beside him quickly explained, Renly has no sense of direction. She was asked by the leader to go out with him. I heard that she's also face blind. She can't remember what others look like. Who knows when she'll forget who the leader is? The leader was fantasizing about possible opportunities. But it's not to the extent that she can't remember when we meet every day. The person beside him was getting more and more depressed. After another 2 days of tough training, Renly and Chaoyang, who were eliminated, volunteered to be Lu Cheng's sparring partners. As for the big devil king Peng Liyun, he didn't have much sparring practice due to his experience with Waku and the influence of hidden scent. He only fully recovered 6 hours before the competition. August 25, 8 p.m. Xinxiang Stadium was packed with people. Passion was burning like fire. At the start of the competition, Peng Liyun almost lost again. After experiencing the 6 paths of reincarnation punch in its entirety, he retaliated crazily and narrowly defeated Gusai with 1 move. He was the first to advance to the finals. A battle that could have been finished in 1 minute was forcibly shortened to 10 minutes by him. After a 15-minute performance, the referee once again stepped into the arena and raised his hand to both sides. Lu Qing, who was holding his phone, stood up slowly. Opposite him, Kaori Karasawa patted her black fencing suit and stood up slowly. Top seed versus Miracle Boy. Chapter 480. Go for it. Peng Liyun, who was beside Lu Qing, took a sip of the nutrient solution and extended his fist with a smile. He had returned from the locker room and was refreshed again. Lu Qing bumped fists with him without saying anything else. When he bumped fists with Renli and Chaoyang and Zhong Ningtao, and was about to turn around and walk to the ring, he muttered in his heart, "Why is Kush cheering so late today? If I wait any longer, I will miss it. And it's not the oven's highlights anymore." At this moment, his phone finally rang with a special notification. He unlocked it and saw a long voice message from Yenjika. Voice message? So long? Is it singing or something? Lu Qing pressed play in confusion and put the receiver to his ear. After a short moment of silence, a clear cough was heard, followed by a delicate child's voice. I'm Eternal Nightfall. Go for it, Lu Qing. After the child's voice came a slightly coarse but equally young female voice. I'm Brahmin. Go for it, Lu Qing. I'm Unparalleled Dragon King. Go for it, Lu Qing. I'm Wonton Seller. Go for it, Lu Qing. I'm Bull Demon King. Go for it, Lu Qing. I'm All the good names are taken by dogs. So embarrassing. Go for it, Lu Qing. Different voices rang out one after another. All of them were active members of the fan forum. Their cheers reverberated and lingered in Lu Qing's ears. He was stunned at first, but then he couldn't help but feel moved. His heart felt warm as if it was soaked in warm water. I'm Okamoto's fan. Go for it, Lu Qing. I'm Nyechichi. Go for it, Lu Qing. At this point there was the initial silence, but soon a clear and melodious girl's voice rang out. I'm Yenjika. Go for it, Lu Qing. When the familiar voice entered his ears, it was like the finishing touch that poked Lu Qing's heart, blurring his vision. He couldn't help but laugh and look to the side. This was the go for it that Ku had carefully prepared. She must have put in a lot of effort. Everyone must have been very enthusiastic and overcame their shyness. Lu Qing lowered his head again. He first sent a fist and dancing emoji and then he sniggered. You should have said, I'm a little fairy. Or use nicknames like Lu Cheng's girlfriend, or Lu Cheng's wife. Hurry up and go to the competition. Stop nagging. Yenjika waved her hand in disdain. Understood. Lu Qing laughed and said, raise your hand and salute. Then he added, thank everyone for me. After sending the message, he locked the screen and threw his phone and wallet to Chaoyang. He turned around and walked along the aisle towards the arena. Just as he took 2 steps forward, he suddenly heard a chorus of shouts. Lu Qing. Lu Qing. Come on, Lu Qing. I haven't won yet and they're already cheering for me? This was the first time Lu Qing had received such treatment in Xinxiang. He instinctively looked in the direction of the voice and saw Chinese flags waving in the air. He saw the faces of his countrymen. When Peng Liyun was competing, they cheered like this too. According to the team leader, these were students studying in Fulua, businessmen, workers who came to earn money, and local Chinese. They had specially come here to cheer for him and the rest. Thank you for your cheers. Lu Cheng's heart warmed, similar to when he was facing Bakuo. He couldn't help but raise his hand and wave at the spectator stand. Sensing his gesture, the men and women with Chinese flags painted on their faces cheered even more enthusiastically, "Lu Qing! Lu Qing! Come on, Lu Qing!" In such an atmosphere, Lu Qing's footsteps became lighter and quicker. He stepped onto the arena before Kaori Karasawa and gathered his aura. It was like a summoned snowstorm, suppressing the surroundings, hovering in low spirits and affecting people's hearts. As for Kaori Karasawa, she walked over slowly. She was so quiet that it reminded one of a deserted bamboo forest where the wind rustled through the leaves, or a clear lake with ripples that reflected the mountains and trees. She swayed under Lu Cheng's brutal blizzard that contained the smell of blood, as if she had no power to resist. However, once the wind passed and the snow stopped, she would immediately return to her peaceful state and remain motionless. "Let him do as he pleases, the moon shines over the river." This phrase suddenly appeared in Lu Cheng's mind. He couldn't help but praise the Xinzhai sect for living up to its name. Kaori Karasawa walked to the predetermined spot and stood firm. A faint but sweet smile appeared on her face. She bowed solemnly and said, "Lu Qing, please enlighten me." "You flatter me." Lu Qing cupped his hands and quickly went through the footage of his opponent's battle, pushing himself to the highest possible state. Kaori Karasawa clenched her right fist and placed it on her left waist. She spread her legs and bent her body slightly, getting into a stance. The surrounding noises suddenly disappeared. Everyone held their breaths and concentrated, waiting for the referee to open the curtains for this important match. The referee looked around and glanced at the electronic clock. Finally, he raised his right hand. After a silent count of 3, he waved it down and shouted, "Begin!" The second match of the semifinals had officially begun. The battle between Japan's 3,000-year-old genius beauty Kaori Karasawa and China's heavenly son of the era, Lu Qing, had officially begun. Kaori Karasawa suddenly lifted her right leg and stomped down hard with the faint glow of her chi. It was as though she was waving a weapon and striking the arena. Bam! The ground shook violently and suddenly cracked open. Rocks and soil were propelled by the hidden force under Kaori Karasawa's feet, flying towards Lu Qing. Some were big, some were small, but all were as fast as bullets. At the same time, Kaori Karasawa used the rebounding force to leap out like a flash of a blade. She closed in on her opponent and circled around him, waiting for him to dodge. Xinzhai sect's Xidagarba takedown. This move was similar to Lin Kei's unique skill of the fighting sect, Ground Fisher. However, instead of creating a burst of energy to shake the enemy, it was used to disturb the opponent, or to attack a group of people who were much weaker than the user. These two moves each had their own unique and ingenious moves. When Kaori Karasawa slashed the arena with her foot, Lu Qing had already imagined what might happen next. He resisted the urge to dodge head-on and instead drew the outline of Emperor Yen and gathered his flame force. Bam! Facing the largest rock, he quickly swung his arm and punched straight at it. Without any fancy moves, he punched the uneven surface of the greenish-gray rock. His terrifying muscles bulged out one by one, and his greenish-black veins were conspicuous. Scarlet flames that were close to white erupted in an instant. Boom! Amidst the loud noise, the bluestone shattered into pieces and flew everywhere along with the chaotic flames. The other smaller stones and soil were blocked by the tumbling airwaves. They moved forward with difficulty for a while before falling down like rain, making popping sounds. Kaori Karasawa didn't care about the hidden weapons that were flying towards her. She arched her body slightly and suddenly swung her right arm backwards, swinging the fist that was on the left side of her waist. With a bang, a white mark appeared and a strong wind swept up, causing the flying rocks to fall powerlessly. Her arm seemed to have turned into a Japanese katana, slicing through the air barrier at high speed towards Lu Qing. Her left hand followed and pushed forward as though she was going for a second attack. Lu Qing, who didn't dodge in a hurry, didn't panic in the face of this attack. He raised his left arm quickly and parried the attack, forming a crystalline layer of ice on the surface of his arm. Crack! The glowing katana chopped down, shattering the layers of ice armor and touching Lu Qing's muscles, tendons and bones. However, it was neutralized by his strength and blocked firmly. At this moment, the left hand that Kaori Karasawa had pushed forward didn't hit the enemy. Instead, she pressed on her own right arm to reinforce it with her strength. Lu Qing immediately felt a heavy pressure. His left arm began to tremble and retracted uncontrollably. His weak point was forcefully squeezed out and his frame was half destroyed. That wasn't the end. Kaori Karasawa pressed and flicked her left hand towards his face. The glowing white light condensed into a sharp blade. Lu Qing misjudged and couldn't block with his right hand in time. He leaned back and bent his waist, causing his opponent's left palm reverse grab to hit the air, shooting a ray of white light into the distance. While leaning back, Lu Qing tightened his right leg and kicked it up, preparing for a counterattack. His martial arts shoes burst into flames and flew out, heading straight for Kaori Karasawa's lower abdomen before the back of his feet. Kaori Karasawa twisted her waist and back, creating a strong wind. After twisting her body, she flashed to the side of the enemy and avoided that fatal kick. Following that, she used the force of the rotation to swing her left arm towards Lu Qing, who was standing up again. Fast and ruthless, it was like a tachi creating a strong gust of wind. Lu Qing responded with absolute reaction. He raised his arm, braced it, and sent his elbow out with a bang. It glowed with a crystalline brilliance and collided head-on with Kaori Karasawa's centrifugal takedown. Crack! Ice crystals shattered and fell. Kaori Karasawa's arm swung back while Lu Qing's elbow trembled slightly. In the reverberation, Kaori Karasawa's right arm straightened and slashed 5 times at Lu Qing's head, throat, chest, and other areas. Her cape fluttered wildly. Armed with Ice Mirror, Lu Qing didn't panic. He responded with the Danforce version of 24 Blizzard Strikes, countering chaos with chaos and attack with attack. Bam 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 bam. Amidst the continuous sounds of explosions, chi flew and flames splashed like red rain. In the midst of the battle, Lu Qing was getting fiercer and fiercer. Just as he was about to gain the upper hand, an extremely dangerous premonition suddenly rose in his heart. Without thinking, he leaned back again even deeper than before, nearing the teppanyaki bridge. At that moment, he saw a ray of light flash past his face in a terrifying manner, leaving behind an obvious white wave of air. Boom! A loud explosion followed, causing Lu Qing's ears to ring and his organs to sway. He almost fell. Xinjai Sek's flying dragon takedown. If it weren't for his ability to sense danger, he wouldn't have been able to dodge or block this sudden strike. Chapter 481. As the trump card of the Xinjai sect, the Flying Dragon takedown's greatest strength wasn't its speed or agility, but its lack of prior warning, making it impossible to predict. If one were to rely solely on absolute reaction by the time they noticed it, it would already be too late to dodge or parry. With this sword move, the Xinjai sect was firmly seated as the #1 swordsmanship in Japan. No one could shake their position. They were even on par with the likes of Amaterasu Shrine and Yakusha Zen Temple. They were one of the major powers that ruled over Japan, not something the ultimate Hadu sect, which had only risen to fame in recent decades, could compare to. Of course, the ultimate Hadu sect, which was able to climb all the way to the top in terms of combat strength, wasn't weak either. Logically speaking, the Flying Dragon takedown shouldn't have regained its former glory in modern society. You lack prior warning? That's fine. I can find 50 or even 100 battle videos of the Flying Dragon takedown and replay them frame by frame. I'm sure I can find something useful, right? However, logic was one thing. Ever since the introduction of the video function, no one had discovered the signs of the Flying Dragon takedown. Perhaps someone had already discovered it, but kept it a secret, intending to keep it as a trump card against the Xinjai sect. Lu Qing, on the other hand, had only been exposed to relevant videos since the start of the King of Youth League. It had been at most 10 days since then, so how could he have discovered his opponent's secret? Unlike Vagar, he hadn't distanced himself from the Flying Dragon takedown for 2 reasons. Firstly, he wasn't strong enough, and his footwork hadn't reached an unbelievable level. Even if he were to engage in a skirmish battle, he would quickly fall into Kaori Karasawa's rhythm. Secondly, he was confident that he could detect it in advance and evade it with his amazing premonition of danger. Who knew that when the time came he would still be dodging awkwardly? Although he had detected it in advance, the speed of the Flying Dragon takedown had exceeded his expectations. That slash seemed to have created the illusion of a hypersonic barrier. When Kaori Karasawa was at the level of a physical invulnerability expert and wielded a specially forged legendary weapon, it wasn't impossible for her to reach that level. Boom! The shockwave from the Flying Dragon takedown expanded to both sides, stirring up a violent gust of wind. It was so strong that it almost blew Lu Qing off his feet. At this moment, the ice mirror in his mind naturally reflected Kaori Karasawa, who was a few centimeters away. She retracted her trembling right arm, her sleeves fluttering like butterflies, revealing a section of her fair skin. It was obvious that she was carrying a heavy burden and would need some time to recover before she could continue her attack. However, Kaori Karasawa's left leg had tensed up and her knee was bent. She was about to kick one of the legs that supported her entire body. She had learned her lesson from the previous incident. She would not allow Lu Cheng to take advantage of the situation and lift her leg. She wanted him to bend down and never come back. While Kaori Karasawa straightened her knee and kicked out with her left leg, Lu Cheng controlled his center of gravity and continued to lean backwards. His waist and back bent again, he straightened his left leg and turned it into a soft whip. He whipped it up from the bottom, standing on one leg and not swaying at all. Bang! The tip of her foot hit the instep, setting off a burst of sparks. The remnants of her martial arts shoes were torn into pieces and Lu Cheng's lift was interrupted. Extending his left leg, Lu Cheng wanted to use the momentum to straighten his back and stand up again. However, Kaori Karasawa was prepared. Just as her left leg was about to land on the ground, she tightened her muscles and straightened her spine. She leaped into the air and launched a series of kicks with her right leg, aiming for the opponent's only support point. In this situation, if Lu Cheng tried to stand up, he would not be able to exert any strength. Even with the ice armor on his right leg, he would inevitably suffer some damage. This would cause him to limp for the rest of the battle and not be able to contend against an opponent who was stronger than him. However, if he tried to block with his leg, he would lose his final support point and completely lose his stance. At this critical juncture, Lu Cheng's mind was as calm as an ice lake or a round mirror. Many thoughts flashed through his mind in an instant. He gave up on the idea of straightening his body and fell backwards even more violently. With this fall, he supported himself with both hands and did a backflip. Taking advantage of the momentum, his right leg struck Kaori Karasawa's foot with a crisp sound, forcefully causing her to deviate from her original trajectory and fall to the side. With a backflip, Lu Cheng steadied himself and met his opponent who was closing in on him again. At this moment, Kaori Karasawa's arm had recovered. She slashed with her twin blades, splitting the air and striking at 5 different spots on her opponent. In the eyes of the audience, the condensed white light seemed to form a constellation. Lu Cheng flexed his joints, stretched his fascia, and used explosive force to hold his ground. He fought and fought with his opponent at the same time, almost circling the entire arena. Loud bangs rang out one after another, stirring up the emotions of the audience and making their blood boil. Amidst the continuous explosions of flames, frost, and white light, Lu Cheng tried to find an opportunity to use severe warning and internal explosion punch. He also tried to use army formula and fighting formula. However, Kaori Karasawa's mind's eye was strong. Once she sensed a change in her opponent's rhythm, or by retreating, she would have sufficient time to prepare. She would avoid the front, attack from the back, or attack from the side, making it impossible for Lu Cheng to succeed. Compared to Vagar, Muko Yamashita, and the rest, this beautiful girl who only appeared once every 3,000 years had a stronger mental cultivation. Her fighting style was also gentler. She knew when to yield and when not to attack and when not to dodge. This gave Lu Cheng a deeper understanding of the details of the battle between Peng Liyun and Renli 2 days ago. They rarely used simplified physical invulnerability or other secret arts. Most of the time they relied on normal moves, their own force and Dan stage explosive force to fight. It wasn't that they didn't want to use them, but that they didn't have the opportunity. If they forced it, they would expose their flaws and give their opponent a chance to take advantage of. With this knowledge, he completely suppressed the impatience in his heart and fought more steadily. Moves such as Snow Cover, Ice Burning, Cold Bite, Aurora, and other moves were used one by one at the right time. Sometimes he used them together with Force Concentration. The more he fought, the more refined his moves became. In the end, he even felt like he could use them at will. At most, we'll just compete on stamina. Kaori Karasawa's sharp senses detected this and was prepared to interrupt her opponent's transformation. After 2 moves, ripples suddenly appeared in Lu Cheng's heart. He had a strong premonition of danger. At the same time as the ripples appeared, he vaguely heard an almost inaudible cracking sound. Not good. His chi and blood retracted abruptly. Along with his body, he curled up into a ball. Just as he crouched down, Kaori Karasawa pulled her left arm out from her waist, leaving afterimages and parting the air. A ray of light flashed and a white airwave formed. Loud booms erupted at the same time, setting off violent sound waves and strong winds in all directions. Flying Dragon takedown again. His scalp went numb and his ears vibrated. Lu Cheng's Dan force exploded like a volcano erupting, propping up his entire body. His muscles bulged with strength. Twisting his muscles, tendons and veins were all exposed. He bounced up, clenching his right fist, half charging and half pounding. At this moment, the audience felt as though they were witnessing a trapped dragon rising to the heavens, or the launch of a rocket. Kaori Karasawa's right palm formed a knife and chopped down at the right time. With a floating glow, it landed squarely on the surface of his greenish-black fist. Bam! Her left arm trembled. Unable to withstand Lu Cheng's all-out attack in her hasty parry, her body swayed backwards. She decided to take advantage of the situation and retreat. Her steps were nimble and her posture nimble. Lu Cheng wasn't going to let this opportunity slip by. While the empty front row of spectators suffered a crack from the missed flying dragon takedown, he raised his hands, formed a seal and outlined an ancient character. All right. His silhouette shot out like lightning, leaving 2 distinct footprints on the ground. He closed the distance between him and Kaori Karasawa in an instant. Seeing her opponent's face clear in an instant, the smell of his sweat wafting into her nose and the sound of his breathing entering her ears, Kaori Karasawa didn't panic. She raised her right arm again and chopped straight ahead. Whoosh! Amidst the ear-piercing friction, Lu Cheng stopped abruptly. His feet created layers of spider webs as his body stopped an arm's length away. At this distance, Kaori Karasawa's knife was bound to miss. Then she would have to endure Lu Cheng's frenzied attacks. However, her eyes suddenly lit up. Her right palm that cut through the air released a bright white glow. Bam! With one chop, the air between her and Lu Cheng was completely destroyed. In an instant, the air surged wildly to both sides, creating an area with very low air pressure. Xingjai Sect vacuum takedown. Lu Cheng felt a terrifying suction force from the area in front of him. He couldn't help but stumble forward. All he could hear was the sound of the wind swirling around him. Kaori Karasawa's follow-up moves came one after another. She tensed her left leg and chopped out horizontally. Dragging a razor-like white light, she whipped her opponent who was leaning forward. Lu Cheng adjusted his muscles in time, channeling the accumulated inertia into his leg. It was the same whip but with a different luster. Crack! The layer of ice shattered. In his haste to block, he was evenly matched with his opponent. However, being evenly matched meant that he wasn't able to take advantage of his opponent's opening. The battle reverted back to the previous situation. Kaori Karasawa used her hands and legs as knives and displayed her swordsmanship to the fullest, forcing Lu Cheng to take a defensive stance. There was no time for him to use the 9 words formula or simplified physical invulnerability. Furthermore, she could vaguely sense that her opponent could predict her flying dragon takedown. She didn't dare to blindly attack again. Instead, she waited patiently for an opportunity where her opponent couldn't dodge and could only take it head-on. Lu Cheng was waiting too. He felt that the almost inaudible cracking sound was the movement of compressing force, bones, tendons, and muscles. It was most likely the precursor to the flying dragon takedown. With this and his premonition of danger, it seemed like he could try to use simplified physical invulnerability to take the flying dragon takedown head-on. Through an intense collision he could create an opportunity like just now. Bam bam bam. The sounds of collisions continued. Both parties seemed to have calmed down and were fighting with unusual patience. They were both waiting. Chapter 482. Kaori Karasawa's chi could be applied to her palms, arms, legs, feet and other body parts to increase the power of her attacks. If her opponent was hit directly on the body, even if he was able to counteract the attack, he could still suffer injuries such as tendons and veins, torn muscles and even broken bones. Therefore, when Vagar fought with her, he had to cover his fists with the power of electricity at all times to form a glove to shatter the scattered light and deflect the tip of the blade before finally completing the clash of powers. Lu Cheng's ice armor was more suitable for such battles than the lightning gloves, as it could effectively slow down the sharpness and ferocity of his opponent's attacks. The flaming gloves produced by Emperor Yen Force were similar to Thunderbolt, as they could burn the white light and explode the opponent, turning defense into offense. If he didn't have these 2 supernatural abilities, he would have to be more careful and only block the non-tip of the blade. For example, he would lift his palm from the bottom up, strike his wrist from the side or push his stance. Although that would make him look like a grandmaster, it would put him in a more passive position. If he wasn't careful, he would be injured and be forced to leave the arena. Every time there was an explosion, sparks would fly and ice crystals would fall. Lu Cheng relied on his instinctive strength to battle Kaori Karasawa fiercely. Banging sounds reverberated in the air, arousing the passion in most of the audience and igniting their urge to vent. Although Lu Cheng's strength, speed, and agility were slightly inferior to his opponent, there wasn't much of a difference after his physique was fully upgraded. As long as he could be patient and defend steadily, Kaori Karasawa wouldn't make any risky attempts. It would be difficult for her to break through his stance and seize the opportunity for victory. Once she did, she would also expose her weaknesses and give Lu Cheng hope of a counterattack. Bam 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 bam. The battle was at a stalemate. Lu Cheng, who was at a disadvantage, defended steadily and integrated his Dan stage martial arts. Kaori Karasawa, who had gained the upper hand, was similarly calm and composed, as though she was slowly chipping away at her opponent. After a full 7 to 8 minutes, both of them had unavoidably used up a lot of stamina. However, Lu Cheng had the automatic replenishment of his Jindan. Apart from a slight delay in his reaction due to mental fatigue, he didn't falter in any other aspect. In stark contrast to Kaori Karasawa, he was gradually showing signs of turning the situation around. Just then, Kaori Karasawa's right arm transformed into a glowing katana and slashed out horizontally. The moment it came into contact with the ice armor on Lu Cheng's forearm, she suddenly exerted the force in her shoulder and spun her katana around the enemy's arm to execute the coil formula. Lu Cheng's arm was knocked away and his body swayed as if he was about to fall to the side. Now was the time. Tang Zixuan's eyes narrowed as she arched her back. A sense of extreme danger flashed through Lu Cheng's mind. His ears twitched slightly and he heard a barely audible clicking sound. It was like a sniper rifle being loaded or a retractable cannon rotating. In such a situation, his center of gravity was skewed and he couldn't jump up in time. If he squatted down or leaned back to dodge, Kaori Karasawa would definitely make a knife at his waist or make a quick downward slash. She wouldn't give him a chance to survive. Apart from falling to the side, dropping his stance and rolling on the ground like a lazy donkey, Lu Cheng seemed to have no other choice. However, he was already prepared. When the clicking sound came, he had already outlined the dark, cold, and devoid of any light or heat in his mind. When the premonition of danger erupted, layers of thunderclouds converged instantly. High temperatures and deafening booms broke the silent darkness and chill. Bam! Lu Cheng lowered his left arm and swung his forearm. Following the ripples created by the ice mirror, he threw a punch from his waist. The original version of severe warning. The reason why he chose this move was because he could add layers and layers of thick ice armor. Otherwise, with the terrifying power of Flying Dragon Takedown, even if he hit his opponent and froze her thoughts, his left arm would be more or less crippled. Without 1 or 2 months of recuperation, he definitely wouldn't be able to recover it. Just as the sparkling and translucent fist was about to strike out, a ray of light suddenly flashed and slashed at the surface of Lu Cheng's fist, colliding head-on with it, giving it no chance to react at all. After the ray of light, the air was split into two and condensed into airwaves. Light converged and dyed the air white, just like the scene after a jet plane swept past. Boom! A loud bang erupted, setting off a violent wind wave that slapped at Lu Cheng, shaking his earlobe and ear gauge. Bam! Lu Cheng couldn't hear the sound of the thick ice armor on his left fist shattering, but he could feel the terrifying force on his body. It was as though he had been hit by a high-speed train. His arm was numb, his muscles swollen and cracked, and his tendons and veins were in sharp pain. Crick! He couldn't stop himself from retreating. His feet rubbed against the ground, leaving 2 obvious marks that looked like ravines. Lu Cheng spat out a mouthful of blood. His left arm was trembling and he couldn't exert any strength. A bone-deep wound appeared on his fist. The power of one slash was earth-shattering. The terrifying power of Flying Dragon Takedown was so exaggerated. In the live thread, everyone's reaction was even more exaggerated. They exclaimed almost simultaneously, F***CK, he blocked Flying Dragon Takedown. I Zhao Ritian am in awe. He actually took Flying Dragon Takedown head-on and he did it. What AF** King Beast. Sky-shattering roar, no problem. In a few of Japan's big forums, there were similar astonishment. He predicted Flying Dragon Takedown? He made a prediction with his body and blocked Flying Dragon Takedown. I think I saw a demonic beast. No, that's Ultraman. This is Kaori-chan's first time being blocked by someone's Flying Dragon Takedown, right? Even though he doesn't have a blade, he would still die if Kaori-chan's Flying Dragon Takedown landed a direct hit on his body. Even if he's a monster who has cultivated chi, he would still be seriously injured and need a few months to recover. How dare he block it so boldly? Amidst the wind and waves, Kaori Karasawa stood in place. Her left arm was trembling non-stop, covered in a layer of white frost. Her beautiful eyes had lost their luster, and she seemed to be in a daze. Severe warning, knocking on heart-questioning sect. Lu Qing couldn't be bothered to check his own body. He endured his injuries, took a deep breath, and gathered his force, spirit and various other uncomfortable feelings to balance the ice and fire and form a Dan. Boom. His Dan chi gushed out. Lu Qing's legs expanded. He bent his knees and straightened them, propelling him forward and pouncing towards his opponent, whose clothes had turned into short sleeves. Drip, drip, drip. From the cracked ground to Kaori Karasawa's front, the dripping blood and sweat could only be found at the ends of his head and tail. It was a testament to the speed and ferocity of his leap. Bam! The muscles and skin on Lu Cheng's left fist contracted, stopping the bleeding. Shaking his right arm, he clenched his fist and hammered down diagonally. With a whoosh, his fist burned with a layer of crimson, almost white flames. Emperor Yen Force. In order to seize the opportunity, Lu Qing didn't prepare the fighting formula, army formula, or simplified physical invulnerability formula. At this moment, Kaori Karasawa's eyes were still in a daze, making the otakus from Japan feel sorry for her. However, her body had already reacted naturally. She swung her right arm backward, drawing a razor-like white glow, slashing right into the raging flames. Eye of the heart. Boom. The force exploded, sending waves of flames tumbling. Kaori Karasawa's black hair was disheveled in the wind. Her body was pushed back by the shockwave and she staggered backwards. It was only then that her eyes regained their luster. Lu Qing swung his right arm and bounced back. His hands formed a seal in front of him, pointing at himself. His expression suddenly turned solemn as he outlined the words in his mind. He bellowed, "Fighting." His muscles expanded, showcasing the beauty of strength. They intertwined, protruding veins of varying sizes. Lu Qing stretched his back and threw out his right fist in an extremely barbaric manner. Bam! The punch pierced through the air, propelling his body forward rapidly. He closed the distance between them and approached Kaori Karasawa's abdomen. Kaori Karasawa's heart suddenly emptied. It was as if she had returned to that quiet Zen hall, back to the time when she was focused on arranging flowers and making tea. Her eyes shone and her clothes suddenly swelled up like a balloon that had been filled. Bam! Her left palm formed a blade and slashed out with a slash. Her clothes suddenly shriveled and clung to her body. Shinjai sect Kasaya takedown. Bam! Her tiny muscles and veins bulged, forming an extreme contrast with the flickering glow on her fair palm. The fighting formula was incomparably violent. In the blink of an eye, Kaori Karasawa was sent stumbling backward. Although her body was light, her legs were heavy, leaving several footprints in the ground. Lu Cheng's body swayed. Immediately he gathered his chi and blood, exploded his Dan force and pounced forward again, not leaving a single gap. Seeing that her enemy was already in front of her before she could regain her footing, Kaori Karasawa's body emitted a soft cracking sound. This time it was more obvious than the flying dragon takedown and ended faster. Bam! She pulled her right arm out in front of her and swung her fist diagonally. It was so fast that it left afterimages, leaving a trail of light as it broke through the air current. The weakened version of flying dragon takedown, flying bird takedown. It required faster preparation before striking, but its speed was correspondingly much weaker. The same went for its power. However, Kaori Karasawa combined them into a terrifying killer move. With that, she achieved a burst of output in a short period of time and defeated Vagar. That was the combo of flying bird takedown, triple return of swallows. Lu Qing knew that this was a critical moment. His lunging momentum halted abruptly. Expanding his right arm, he swung it quickly and threw out a punch. Bam! Fist and palm collided, creating a deafening sound in the air. Lu Qing had just used the momentum to pull back when he heard a cracking sound. He saw Kaori Karasawa's left arm striking out in quick succession. It was just as fast, just as ruthless, and just as covered in white light. Bam! He forcefully exploded the force in his left shoulder and swung his arm. Finally recovering from the loss of consciousness, he spread his fingers and grabbed at the enemy's palm blade. Whoosh! Amidst the sharp scraping sound, Kaori Karasawa's left palm sank and her right arm struck again. It was still a reverse chop and it was still dragging out air waves. Triple return of swallows. Lu Qing didn't have time to perform force concentration. He could only rely on the senses of ice mirror to raise his arm and block hastily. Bam! His arm trembled and bounced away. His ice armor shattered inch by inch and his fascia was injured. However, he couldn't help but feel a sense of joy. He managed to block Kaori Karasawa's triple return of swallows. That combo had taken a lot out of her and put a heavy burden on her. This should be enough to turn the tide of the battle, right? At this moment, Kaori Karasawa's eyes were filled with pain. Her left palm that was caught by Lu Qing suddenly bounced up and broke through the air barrier with a cracking sound. It was so fast that it left after images behind. Shinjai Sek's forbidden move, quadruple return of swallows. Even though Lu Qing's ice mirror reflected it, his reflexes couldn't keep up. Just as he raised his left arm, his opponent's palm had already stopped right in front of his throat. The referee's eyes were filled with admiration. He raised his hand and announced, "Kaori Karasawa wins." Lu Qing instantly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. His heart was filled with a myriad of emotions. Kaori Karasawa bent over and panted heavily. She had actually forgotten the most important etiquette in Japan. Quadruple return of swallows wasn't a move that was easy to withstand. It was the same for both the opponent and herself. Masa Otaki, a researcher from the Japanese delegation, was looking at the blood on the stage. She was so excited that she couldn't wait to pounce on it. Kaori-chan, go step on it and bring it back." After Kaori Karasawa had caught her breath, Lu Qing exchanged a bow with her. He then shook his head and turned to walk down the stone steps. Along the way, he remembered the leader's instructions to not leave a single drop of blood or sweat behind. Hence, he took a detour and walked 2 more steps. When his back view descended the stone steps, the blood on the ground spontaneously combusted and swayed unsteadily. Masa Otaki's smile froze on her face. "You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."